everyone, welcome to this episode of Conversation Street with me, Gemma.
And me, Michael. Hello.
Today we're talking about what happened last year.
As if we haven't spoken about it enough in the past week or two. What with the awards, just general end of year thoughts. Yeah, this week's is going to be our year in review for 2024. Once that's done, we can close the door on it. And then it's over and we're looking forward to 2025. But like we always like to do, we thought it'd be worth taking a look at the 12 months in total, the stories, the characters, the off-screen stuff, particularly, maybe a bit of a focus on the stories and the characters that didn't get so much time in the spotlight for the awards. And just kind of, seeing what our final thoughts on the year are, really. I don't know whether you want to start with the off-screen stuff. I mean, I don't know. Are people more interested in listening to stories off-screen? I don't know. It feels to me like it's right to talk about Corrie as a product and a thing that was sent to entertain us, and how that all came to be, and talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff first. Do you think?
There was a bit of drama, wasn't there?
I don't know whether there was more drama off-screen or on-screen last year.
I mean, we only know what's reported in the press.
Yeah, I mean, press stirred up drama last year, for sure.
So.
But, I mean, there's always going to be some element of unease, excitement, mixture of both when a new producer gets announced. I think when we did the year in review last year, we probably found out already that Iain Macleod had been announced, or maybe we were just about to. It was pretty much a year ago this week. It was the 8th of January 2024 when it was announced that he was finally stepping down from the producer role of Coronation Street.
No, he was stepping up.
And stepping up to do his executive producer role. We've got a video out there, haven't we, where we talked about our initial reactions to it. I don't think it's unfair to say that the overwhelming reaction online was relief that he'd gone, or that he was going to go, don't you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, just like as Coronation Street is a continuing drama, and people therefore want to speculate about when it's going to end, and they want to be the one who predicted the end, and wrote the article that finally, put
the nail in the coffin.
Whenever there's a producer, once they've been in situ for maybe a couple of years, then the articles will start when are they leaving? When are they leaving? Who's going to replace them?
I can't remember whether there was an awful lot in the press kind of asking for that. I know it was mostly the fans, that were saying, we've had enough of Iain Macleod. And with all producers, often you'll get the best ideas in the first few years. And he had been in situ for a very long time compared to, the likes of Kate Oates and Stuart Blackburn and most producers before him, to be honest.
He was very there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with COVID in the middle, that's gonna, you got to cling on there and keep it going and keep steering the ship forward. But yeah, maybe it was felt by some that there was a few holes in the sails at this point, or maybe it was a bit rudderless. So the news that he was
surely you don't steer the ship forward, you just kind of hold on to it. You start steering it, you're going to go
just
all over the
because
place.
I live in Southampton, it doesn't mean that my sailing metaphors are tip-top, to be honest. But yeah, people were, I think, happy to hear that he'd gone, but it was also paired with the revelation that he was stepping up to executive producer role, and I think that poured a bit of cold water on the news, didn't it?
For some people, I mean, look, we're not blameless here. We were talking a lot about him and saying that perhaps, I mean, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to say that producers should be, if you're talking about creative decisions, I think it's fair that you have them come and go. I don't think that it makes sense that you can keep going in this job, because it's so intense. It's not a normal job.
Yeah.
It's not a normal TV job, because you don't have seasons, you don't have an off period, you don't get time to think.
Just constantly going.
It's like a hamster wheel. You're running and running and running, and you're just staying in the same place. Must be really, really difficult. So I think it makes sense to sort of say we should be turning people over, and we were certainly sort of saying that ourselves, that maybe Iain Macleod, I think the thing is about it is it's really difficult to tease out what is Iain Macleod's influence and what is ITV's influence, especially considering the state of the finances. that we've heard about people saying.
You've heard tell of that, yes.
And it's obvious, you can see it on screen. There have been articles about it, saying that's an issue with the show. And I think a lot of the sort of elements that maybe we don't like about Coronation Street are driven by practicality, and I don't think that's going to change if you change the producer, because they're still going to be driven by the same
not
thing.
necessarily, but different producers will definitely have different visions and different
priorities. There's always going to be an element of change, but there's certainly parts of it that I feel are inescapable because of how ITV
how it's
what
set
they
up.
do with the show, which is sad because it's their biggest show.
I think when people were still a little bit nervous to know that he would be kind of pulling the strings, as it were, in the role of executive producer, but there was still then the question, the hope, the excitement about who his replacement would be. But unfortunately, and this did come at a time when articles were starting to come out in the press about, it's the end for Coronation Street, it's not as good as it used to be, which, to be honest, I don't think the press had been doing a whole lot of before last year, really. It kind of just started to kick off when it didn't reach the top 10 in the Christmas charts in 2022.
Well, we've been doing this long enough
23,
now.
Sorry.
To know that there's always been murmurings of the same sort of thing, and especially with all the soaps, because they're competitive with one another, there's always people, and it's difficult really for me to discern the difference between what the press is saying and what the fans are saying, because I kind of not to be rude, but I don't think of the soap news coverage as being anything more than glorified fan gossip. Because
soap journalists are passionate soap fans, aren't they? And they want the best for the soap.
But there's always stuff about, EastEnders is better than Corrie now. Oh, Corrie's better than EastEnders. Oh, Emmerdale's really brilliant at the moment. It's a shame that EastEnders is so crap.
It's very much like,
it's always like
it's
that.
Like the console wars, isn't it?
It really
it's
is.
Nintendo versus Sega, and they kind of grew out of that.
Hang on a minute. Sega's gone.
Well, yeah, I know, exactly. That's what I'm
maker.
saying. That's what I'm saying. It kind of grew out of it, and then
not really,
there was a bit.
You still get
It doesn't.
Sony fanboys.
I don't think there's as much Sony versus Xbox versus Nintendo. They've kind of learned to live with each other a little bit more.
Maybe it's more like Apple versus Android.
Yeah, maybe it is. People like to, feel that the side that they've picked is the best, don't they?
Well, it's like football. It's like tribalism.
Yeah. So we were kind of really hoping that the replacement would be someone who could maybe bring Coronation Street out of the lull that it maybe got into. But unfortunately, the news of Iain Macleod's demotion/promotion wasn't paired.
It's not a demotion.
It wasn't paired. No, it's not. It's not at all, is it? It wasn't paired with the reveal of who the next producer would be. And we had to wait 3 months, I think it was, until we found out who it was. And that was a really concerning time as a Coronation Street fan, wasn't it? It was like, well, who's in charge now? When did he leave? We saw that he had his leaving due at the start of March, but then for the whole of March, it's like, well, who's in charge now? And it wasn't until a month later we learned that Kate Brooks would be taken over, but that was also after a load of articles talking about nobody wants to do the job at Corrie, it's a poison chalice, Macleod sandwich, you heard, was the catchphrase, wasn't it? I think that's what we rate Coronation Street out of this year, how many stars out of Macleod sandwiches. And it felt impossible. You got Verity Macleod, his wife, as the deputy producer or assistant, I can't remember, and then him as the executive. And it was a really difficult position, I imagine, to try and fill, because you thought you'd feel that you had creative control, but actually you got an executive producer, which, to be fair, Coronation Street has had quite a lot of in the past, and then he's your underling, if you like, your subordinate, is reporting to them over wine and cheese of an evening. I don't know, but we found out that it
certainly feels a bit like the sort of thing you'd put in a soap.
It really, really did. And who knows, how much it took for Kate to be persuaded to take on the role, or was she kind of ushered into it? I mean, it feels, from speaking to Kate, and we don't want to talk too much about predictions and hopes for 2025 at the moment, because that's not what this is about. Feels like she honestly is a big fan of Coronation Street. She's worked there before in other roles over the past 10-15 years or so, but I just wish that, for stability's sake, she'd been able to take that role sooner and step into it. Because even though we found out at the end of March, I kind of got the impression that she wasn't working on the soap. She wasn't working on Corrie for a little while after that, because we didn't get her episodes credited until November time. So you had
she was still joint with Verity.
Well, no, she was joint with Verity, but that was only, mid-November until
That's
December.
what I mean.
Yeah, Verity was still credited as producer from, was it the summer onwards? And that was just kind of a bit of a stopgap. And yeah, now finally we're out of it, and we can look forward in another episode. But
I do think Verity deserves a lot of credit for the work that she's done.
Absolutely, I think she does.
And I do think, although it felt quite subtle, there was a difference between her producing and Iain Macleod's producing.
Well, I found it really interesting, the Who Killed Joel special that was on ITVX after the big reveal, and she was there saying, "Yeah, I'm the producer. Interview me about it." And she sung,
good for her.
yeah, she said the right kind of things, I thought.
And also, even though Kate Brooks has been solo credited as producer since mid-December, we're talking about storylines now. Like you said, we're not going to get into too much of this year or any predictions, but Mason's storyline that we just watched, he was told in February this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So this is still...
This is the Macleod germination, isn't it? But it was down to Kate Brooks to produce it, to deliver it.
Vision,
yeah, exactly.
Which she's done very well.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, we had that kind of worry in the background, and it was just a really scary time. Not scary, maybe that's a bit melodramatic.
Too much of your emotional life into a television show. But unfortunately, we have, because we do this podcast and also we care about the show. It's just really hard to kind of work out how much to care, because you can really care too much.
Yeah, I mean, you got
about something that it's important to all of us. If you're listening to this, it's important to you as well. You've got to get a bit of perspective, but equally, we can't just pretend we don't care about it, because it's something that we.
A lot of the articles that were written. I mean, I know one of our listeners wrote that Guardian article in the springtime about what's going on with Coronation Street, and a lot of the people that were criticising it, maybe a little bit more publicly, once Iain Macleod had gone, were doing it with a love of Coronation Street, with wanting it to be changed. It wasn't like they were slating it because they hated it. A lot of them wanted it to be good again.
My first reaction is always to be a bit defensive when somebody criticises it, but how that's really hypocritical of me, because that's all we do on the show is criticise it over and over again.
Yeah, we just do it to a little echo chamber of a small number of listeners, don't we? We don't put it out there in the public.
Oh, well, I don't know it feels a bit like bitching about your sister to your dad, whereas when you start taking it to other people, you kind of feels a bit backstabby, even though it's not. And
I think some of the articles were certainly more.
It's really silly.
Sort of a bit more levelled in their criticism of Corrie than others, because you had things like that. You had out and out Corrie's awful at the moment. You had cast members past and present stepping up to say, yeah, it's not as great as it used to be. And even Sean Wilson was interviewed in February, and he was saying, yeah, soaps aren't the same as they were back when I was in it. So it's kind of interesting that he went from that to a few months later being offered his job back. Then you got some of the more outspoken and possibly actors who've maybe got a safer position on the soap, like Maureen Lipman, Jack P. Shepherd, speaking out, saying, well, Maureen was saying, oh, people are getting murdered in knicker factories these days. Anything that ticks the box of social problems. I can't remember what it was that... Oh, Jack P. Shepherd later on the year talked about how he wanted some things on Gail's last episode changed, didn't he? So when you got cast members saying... It's not all that great. I mean,
Maureen Lipman is Coronation Street royalty, not just because, we're sycophantically saying how great her character is, but, she was married to Jack Rosenthal. He was a writer back in the early days. She's obviously spoken to him about what Coronation Street is, and it was intimately
what it should be,
very understood deeply what he was doing when he was working on the show. And so when she's saying it's not the same as it was, you take notice. But at the same time, they're not showing classic Corrie, vintage Corrie on ITV. They obviously don't think there's a market for that kind of thing. I disagree, but I also think there's no market for at 8 p.m. having a show about somebody's sink flooding and their cat's gone missing.
There could be. It's just about getting the balance right, isn't it? I do think
that there's a bit... I feel as though you have to have a bit more courage with your talent. I really think that many of the writers on Corrie and the actors could make that a compelling story that you'd want to watch. But I also think it's a different world. Coronation Street never had soaps that were rivals to them for a long time.
Yeah.
And so you're not competing. You weren't competing with, the great wedding drama where everyone dies at the end. You weren't competing with, I don't know, stuff that we don't talk about anymore because it hasn't stood the test of time.
Well, Corrie's problem in recent years, of course, is how it's competing with a vast swathe of telly that wasn't there before. Your Netflixes,
streaming.
your Disney Pluses, or
with so much money behind them. Like you're talking productions that are 10 episodes that cost multiple $1 million to make. Like some episodes of television now are costing $100 million to make, and then you're going to saying, "Oh, Coronation Street is not doing as well as it used to be." Yeah, because they're doing it on a shoestring, but they're still doing so well. If you look at returns for your money, I think Corrie's still one of the best valued TV shows on the telly. Like just because of how much ridiculous money. I mean, for a starter, they save money on dragons.
This is true.
Because
Evelyn's all we need for that.
Evelyn and
She
Rita
ticks that
don't
box.
need any CGI.
Yeah, so, the other thing that competition. Often you find it's the younger crowd that will be drifting more towards that, and Corrie's clearly been really trying to get hold of that young audience, and I don't know whether it's just time for it to give up on that dream, even with the Mason story this week. Not to give up.
Are you thinking like maybe when people get to a certain age they'll start watching it, and there's no point trying to get teens to watch it? I just think the screen time.
Maybe that attitude is just giving up then.
Screen time is up. Isn't it? It's not like people are watching less online. They're not watching less telly. They're not engaging less.
No, they're
with
just
screens.
watching it differently.
They're just watching it differently than we did. And so,
I think, though, if the stories that were in Coronation Street were maybe targeted more towards the parents, then their children would just join in. A teenager will watch stories about Sally and Tim or Jenny or what have you. They don't need to be watching stories about children their own age. Because when I watched Coronation Street, it was because my parents watched it. It wasn't because there were little children like me around.
But don't forget that children are more independent consumers now. When we were little, there was one TV. You're still stuck in the past.
Declining family values.
It's not that. It's that even in a room where the telly's on and everyone's in the room with their faces turned to the television, they're still there with their hand, their phones in their hands. Oh, what are they doing? Are they actually watching it? I don't really know.
Yeah.
But then you look at the viewing figures, and I keep harping on about this, but things like Game of Thrones and all those big television shows don't get really significantly for how much they cost. Great deal of money, great deal of more viewers than Corrie does. Like
in their home countries.
Like here, Game of Thrones, about the same as Corrie.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Wow.
I mean, Corrie is still doing Corrie's averages. I've only got the averages here for the first 8 months of the year or so.
This is my biggest bugbear. Don't compare Coronation Street viewing figures to Coronation Street viewing figures. Compare it to everything else on telly, and it's still coming out quite high.
If you compare Coronation Street to the other soaps, it's still obviously on top. In these for the first 8 months of the year, which is all I've got at the moment, 4.4 million viewers per episode is the average for Corrie. That compares to 3.91 for Emmerdale, and EastEnders is 3.54. So EastEnders is still at the bottom, but obviously it gets pointed out that EastEnders viewing is going up year on year, ever so slightly. But I think the glory days of EastEnders of a year ago, when it was in a real heyday, and everybody thinks that Chris Crenshaw is the saviour. I mean, he did. I'm not. Don't want to do him down. He did a fantastic job with EastEnders by all accounts. Yeah. But it feels like the shine's coming off of it just a little bit recently.
Right, so Coronation Street,
from what I hear,
viewing figures. What is this? 4.4 million.
Yeah.
From what?
That's from January to August this year.
Okay, so. season 7, like, I always use Game of Thrones because it's a popular show, everyone knows it, everyone's heard of it, and people, I loved it. Season 7 premiere of Game of Thrones 2017, how many people do you think watched that premiere?
What, here? Well, if that feels like it's going to be lower, like 3?
3.5 million.
Yeah.
And on average, 3 million. Are we really going to say that Coronation Street's a failure because it's down
it's just
every
sad
year?
to see the graph going down, isn't it, really?
But
why should we care? I mean, if we were enjoying it
you
still.
can't. This is the problem. Everyone looks at it in isolation. They don't look at it in comparison to overall viewing figures. And if you did, I bet you they would be going down too. Every single thing.
Just because the pool is wider
is just
to dip into.
Continuously to get bums on seats. That's just how it is. And I think, there's not a lot you can really do about the pool of people getting smaller.
There are things that don't help though, like there was the schedules were an utter mess at times last year. Do you remember I think it was January and February last year? You never knew what day Corrie was going to be on. There was a couple of weeks where it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but you had others where it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, nothing, Monday, Friday, Sunday, and that goes on until early March, I think, when it settled down. And then you had the Euros come along, and you had Monday and Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and that really doesn't help when a soap opera is something when you're just supposed to know when it's on. It's kind of part of your routine in your daily life, isn't it?
It messes things up. I mean, even this week we've got Fridays.
Fridays is Thursdays, isn't it?
And even people that listen to the show who obviously care about Corrie will sometimes be caught out, even though we say at the end, like, if there's any differences to when it's on.
Yeah.
People still like, I didn't realise. Yeah. It just is difficult to remember.
One of the interesting things about those weeks when there maybe wasn't 3 episodes, at the end of the year we have ended up with fewer Corries than the last few years. Last year in 2024 we had 304 episodes of Corrie. Last year we had 311, so we got 7 fewer episodes this year. 2022 there was 313, 2021 there was 314, so going back 3 years you got 10 fewer episodes last year. Now is that related to the budget as well? Is that all kind of sneakily
I can
trying
tell you that I almost guarantee that. I bet you ITV never said, oh yeah, we'll just give you the normal amount of money that you would get in a year, and you can, maybe this means you get more money per episode. There's no way it happened like that. No. I bet you they only got 304 episodes worth of money. But did they know at the beginning of the year that was what was going to happen? Because if they're cancelling episodes, are people losing out on money?
I must imagine that this gets decided quite a way in advance.
But I know, but there are people, when we think about who works on Corrie, we always think of the actors, but there are loads of other people that work on it, like, production staff and people like that. And I'm not thinking of writers either, because I think they get paid per script. I'm not sure.
I think so.
But, the people that work as a contractor who aren't talent or whatever you want to call it, like lighting people, camera people, are they getting paid less because Coronation Street dropped 10 episodes because of the scheduling? Bloody hope not, but if they are, I wouldn't be surprised.
It is, but if it's all part of the cost-cutting
it's like
measures.
It's like during COVID when they were getting the actors to do their own makeup. I can understand why they did, but I'm really honestly surprised that they didn't say, oh well, you don't need makeup people anymore, let's just get rid of them. How long until that happens?
Well, speaking of the schedules, one of the things that they did do this year, of course, which was the biggest scheduling change that I can remember in Coronation Street, at least since they moved up to their 6 episodes, was this ITVX early uploads, which has been going for 3 months now, maybe. I think it was like mid-October that first started. We obviously let off quite a bit of steam when that news broke. I wasn't happy with it. I still stand by the fact that I don't like the idea, the very, very selfish idea that all these people are watching it before me, because I can't watch it at 7 o'clock in the morning.
It's such an unrelatable thing to complain about.
I know. I still don't like the idea that I need to be more wary about spoilers than I used to be. There hasn't been too many things that have been spoiled because of the early uploads, but there's been some. And I think, this week, I know we're not talking about 2025 particularly, but just yesterday's episode with Mason stabbing, that seemingly spoiled quite a few people because everybody were, quite understandably passionate about it. Why they didn't put that episode on just in the evening, which they have done, like they did
Yeah.
it with the Joel death. I would, obviously the Joel death was a big reveal because it was the end of a whodunit, but Coronation Street must have known the kind of reaction that this episode was going to get, because it was absolutely fantastic. And a lot of people, us included, had predicted that Mason wasn't going to make it through the end of the episode before we watched it. But I wish that that really does stick with me. I'm not as fuming as I was when I heard that it was happening. I've kind of got used to the fact that we can't watch it live with everybody else. It's not the water cooler thing that it used to be. It has made recording the podcast on Friday a bit easier because we've been able to watch it a bit earlier, and the same when it's been on for my school holidays, we've been able to watch it in the morning and maybe get a bit of recording earlier. But I still can't let go of the fact that I wish they didn't do it. How are you kind of feeling? Do you reckon have your thoughts changed about the early uploads?
No, not really. My main issue with it is that it kind of spoils the online discourse.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't mention that.
Because, and it's really unfair. I think it's really unfair to put it onto other fans' shoulders to like, oh, you mustn't talk about it.
Don't spoil this.
And I don't want to blame anybody. It's not anyone's fault. But vague posting about stuff like going, oh my god, my heart broke at the end of today's episode, or you guys are going to want to watch today's episode as soon as you can, or can't believe they went there. Like all of that stuff. When you go into it, even if you've seen it, doesn't tell you what happened. You know what's happened because you're not stupid. So when you go into it and you've read something like that, I'm not talking about anyone specific. Those are not examples. I'm not real examples. But you went into Monday's episode and you read, my heart was broken by the end of the episode. You know that Mason died. You just know.
Yeah,
and
but you're right. It's not. It shouldn't be on them.
It's not fair
to keep it quiet.
And I've seen people things like
about
like the Swala fans. You see them talking about stuff, and some of them get mad at each other for spoiling things. But then some of them will post spoilers about stuff in advance, and then there's a lot of tension, I think, sometimes between them because they're so excited about sharing, and it pours cold water all over them because are they going to restrain themselves to wait until 9 p.m. to talk about it? Are there certain people that are being muted or excluded, or are you going to alienate people if you don't talk about it right away? It just kind of, I feel a bit like it just pours cold water over a lot of discussion because nobody's watching it at the same time. And
we've
I've always
tweeted
said that
a lot less, and it's not because of the old Twitter exodus that's going on at the moment. It's just because we used to tweet about live things as they were going on, and now we just don't really.
And I've said a lot
very often
before about, I think appointment television is the one advantage that soaps have over other television. Sports and other things where the outcome cannot be known before it happens because it's live. Any live. This is why broadcasters, everyone craps all over reality television and things like Love Island or whatever and Big Brother, but this is like a bastion of television now because you don't know what's going to happen until it's broadcast. You can't spoil it. Nobody knows who's going to get evicted or whatever. And so if you can recognise the importance of appointment television like sports and reality television, why would you then undermine one of the few advantages that soaps have over other things, and by putting it on at 7 o'clock in the morning? I mean, time is going to tell. I kind of hope that they're doing this as a trial, and I would imagine it would make sense that they're going to revisit as they...
I think it's going to come down to advertising and whether it gets them more money at the end of the day, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really pleased for the people that this is making life easier for.
And it does seem to be younger viewers who, Swallow fans, a lot of them are young people. I mean, a lot of them are our age. But, and you're going to have to generalise to talk about these things, but when you're younger, if you're in education, you're going to have time in the morning sometimes, especially if you're at college or uni where you don't have to go in at a certain time every day. if you're lectures or whatever, you're going to have time in the morning to watch it. And if you're excited about it, you're going to watch it straight away. Yeah. And I love that passion and enthusiasm, and we don't want to kill that. No way. That's what we need.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't if I could. I mean, over the holidays, we do. After.
Yeah, but the thing is about it, once you've watched it, what do you do then? This is why a lot of people are going onto Discord and stuff like that, where you can talk about it, and you're not spoiling anything because people are joining the chat to talk about it as they're watching it.
Do you understand Discord? I've got no idea how it works. I literally haven't got a clue about what really Discord is, apart from you can chat on it.
What? Oh, AOL. Look, we bring that back, please.
What? AOL Messenger?
Yeah.
I heard that ICQ shut down last year. Did you ever use ICQ?
What is that?
It's an instant messenger. It's one that I used to use it loads in the early 2000s. Anyway, I digress. The other thing about the ITVX uploads that I found maybe a little bit disappointing is, even though they're on there, on the hub, on ITVX as it is now, it's still not easy to find.
Why don't they have a category down the side? They've got all these, the categories down the side to find what you want. They don't have soap. Well, they've got a soap page.
There's got a soap page, and
they get to it.
They trumpeted this when they were introducing it to us. They said, "Oh, we got a whole new soap section, and all the soap related programs you can find on there. You can find Denise Black pretending or acting in the role of Elsie Tanner in the early 90s. Then you can see the Corrie pantomime of 2006 or whenever it was. You can see the classic episodes. They're all together in this new soap hub." I can't find it. If ever I want to find Coronation Street.
And I'm like, oh, it's the soap hub.
Yeah.
How did I get here?
But it's hidden. And there's something that I would have thought that Corrie might be wanting to push front and centre. It's really impossible. So we just go left and go to the search, don't we? We search for Coronation Street, or my list we've added it to.
More complicated.
And maybe it just goes to show that Corrie doesn't want to promote it. ITV doesn't want to promote it too much. Like,
don't be a conspiracy theorist.
No, maybe I'm turning into it, but if they want the youth to watch Coronation Street, why isn't it right there when you turn on ITVX?
There's definitely this sentiment that ITV doesn't want to have Coronation Street anymore. And I don't know, apart from being snobbish and thinking that it's beneath you, I don't know why you would ever say that, because it still is a cash cow for ITV.
Yeah, I don't.
It costs a crap ton of money to make, and it gets a crap ton of money back. It's always in the top. I know not at Christmas, and it seems to be that's the most important thing. Let's not forget that at Christmas this year, it was beaten by a movie and a scripted television show that were the most watched in the last 20 years. How can you compete with something that's like once in a generation, that is?
Yeah.
That does not happen every year on Christmas television. No. So I can totally forgive them for not being in the top 10 at Christmas this year. And I still don't know what the consolidated figures say.
No, I don't know.
But yeah, ITV, maybe there are some snobs, but I don't know what the hell, if there really are, which I don't believe, if there really are snobs at ITV that are trying to slowly kill off Coronation Street, what the hell are they going to replace it with? Like Patrick Stewart reading Shakespeare next to a candle?
They're just more easily unscripted reality TV stuff, but it would be very short-sighted.
I'm talking about snobs who think that Corrie's beneath them. They really going to go, oh, I don't like serial drama, but I do love Love Island. Let's have more of that, please. That's classic.
Well, maybe they just want to replace it with more police shows, and maybe that's what they're secretly doing by Corrie turning it into one.
Do you know what? Yeah. If we could do an episode on conspiracy theories for Coronation Street, because I'm a you think Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist, you give me 5 minutes, I'll come up with 10 conspiracy theories for Coronation Street. How about this? Coronation Street is actually at the moment working on developing 2 spin-off shows that are going to be complementary to Coronation Street, just the way that Holby City was complementary to Casualty. One of them is going to be a police drama, and one of them is going to be a medical drama.
Could happen.
Why could it not happen? You could have companion shows for Corrie, and maybe that's the future of it.
I wonder.
Because how Corrie... At the end of the day, this extra six episode, I think, has been the ruin of Coronation Street. Not the ruin, but it's really contributed to the extra stress and workload in an exponential way that doesn't really make sense. You think you add an extra episode on the end of 5, it's just the same amount of work. It's not. It seems to be exponentially more work to deal with this extra episode than the individual 5 episodes are. So why not then take a completely different production team, a completely different set of people. Maybe the actors float around and then you make a different show, because at the moment you've got a bunch of people sitting around doing nothing because they're not in the show. You could have Asha being on the show every week if she was on, Weatherfield Casualty.
I think that if they did do a spin-off, I don't know whether that would feel like it was too much for some people.
But it would be too much. We couldn't deal with it.
We could not.
I think I'd have
We'd have to quit.
Jump off
I
a
think
cliff.
at the end of the day, though, the stories about how Corrie wants to kill off, ITV wants to kill off Corrie, you got to remember that this new Media City set, it's only 10 years old.
Yes.
What's the stat? Is it the
And
biggest?
they're still building stuff.
They're still building stuff. They're still expanding it. It's the biggest.
Yeah, it's the biggest lot. It's the biggest
filming
single set for a television show in the world.
I
mean, you've got
it's
bigger
not going
sets.
anywhere. You got to make use of it.
You've got bigger sets, obviously, but they
yeah, the lot. Yeah, the purpose-built lot is the biggest in the world. So they're going to make use of it for a good time to come.
If
I
they
don't
got
think
rid
Corrie's...
of it, they've invested so much money.
Yeah,
they've invested too much money, and they're getting too much money. Something catastrophic would have to happen to Coronation Street for it to be over. And I feel as though there are lots of people that cannot wait for that to happen, and I think it's really sad. There are loads of people that seem to be ghoulishly invested in the downfall of Coronation Street and love predicting it and talking about it continuously. Every time there is an article or anything negative written, they like pour over it and share it and get excited about it. Such a negative way to live your life, and it really is tiresome to read some of these comments from people. I just avoid them now. I just can't understand why you hate something.
This isn't
so
everybody.
much. I'm talking about the people that are invested in the downfall of Coronation Street. Don't take me the wrong way about this. If you are finding it offensive because you criticised it once, I'm not talking about you. We criticise it all the time, but we're not sitting here like rubbing our hands together like a little raccoon waiting for it to finish, like some people are. You'd think Coronation Street went around the country murdering people's mums the way people talk about it.
I mean, people are saying that... because it's different to how it was when they grew up. It's almost like it's taking a dump on their childhood.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Look, I think that lots of criticisms are really fair.
Yeah, they are. But
I personally, I don't really like talking about resolutions, but I'm going to try to be more positive, and I'm going to try to engage less with negativity. And I'm not going to like crap on you if you want to. I'm just going to say, it's much nicer to live your life not being negative or not seeking out negativity, and it's so easy, and it really does feel this like animal part of your brain, like dopamine. Like, I love reading negative comments about things I hate. I really enjoy it so much. If there's somebody I don't like on television and I read a comment about how crap they are or how stupid they are or what their stupid face looks like, I'm like, yeah, they're stupid. I hate their stupid face. But I'm like, what's my soul doing? How is that helping me? I don't think it is. I'm going to try and stop it.
Well, that's an excellent resolution there. We must get onto the storyline soon and the characters and everything that happened actually on the show this year. But is there any other like behind the scenes or non scripted stuff that stood out to you for this year?
We're not talking about the podcast at the moment.
No. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
Right, so I think there's been, to me, it feels as though Coronation Street's engaged more with influencers.
I think that's been really positive for 2024. Influencers and fans in general. I think that their social media has taken a turn for the better this year.
Behind the scenes stuff, interviews, how we made this. Like when they had Callum Lill doing a day in the life of a Coronation Street actor.
Yeah, and
all
Kate
that stuff.
done all
Really
that as
cute,
well.
really fun. Nice.
I still remember, was it for Valentine's Day? There was somebody taking little chocolates around to everybody. Just little bits like that I don't know. I imagine don't take much to put together. It's really cute. And having Coulson going around at the beginning of December asking people when they put the Christmas tree up. That's great. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean...
And there's been more this year.
I think the genesis of that was Corrie Good News with Coulson during lockdown, and he did such a bloody brilliant job.
He's such a
charismatic, personable
presenter.
guy. He's so friendly and chill. I mean, we've spoken to him, at the quiz, and he was just really nice.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think he's a great guy.
And obviously, when you were talking about getting more people involved and trying to G up. It makes sense. When you're in a year where it starts off with the floodgate is opening for negativity on Corrie, it makes sense to say, how can we counter that? Maybe this is one way. I quite like what they did with the free Roy Cropper is innocent story. I mean,
and they gave us a t-shirt.
It felt a little kind of corporate, but, sending it out to some influencers to share on social media, that's great. Maybe I just feel good because we got one, but I like how they did that. I like how they did the press day that also included some other influencers for Corrie and non-Corrie. Spreading the word and getting more people talking about it that aren't just journalists.
Content creators. I know I had a big argument with somebody on YouTube about the word influencer, saying they hated the word influencer.
I don't like describing myself as an influencer.
I know. Well,
it feels a bit too Gen Z.
It's a bit of a crap word, but it's what you're called.
Yeah.
And Coronation Street, really, I thought that was clever. What they did with the people, and there were all different people at the press day. There was somebody who reviewed pubs and he came and reviewed the Rovers. There was somebody who did rants and he got the actors to do rants. There was somebody who was just an interior decorator.
Rated Sally's house.
And rated everybody's interiors. I love that. That's so great. What a brilliant idea. What a lovely way of getting... I think it's
it did lead to positivity, even if only very temporarily.
Making Coronation Street culturally relevant online.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people think of it as like a stuffy old grounds thing. It's not, because the people that were there that we spoke to, most of them were younger than us, and they were loving it. They were like, "Yeah, I love this show." Maybe they did say I watched it with my mum or my nan or whatever, but they still really, really liked it, and it's still a cultural institution, and it's one of those things that we look down on. And it's so crazy, this country, right? We go mad for a penguin wearing a chicken hat who's made of plasticine and say that this is like the cultural mecca of the country, and what a fantastic output. And it bloody is. It's great. I loved it. But how is that any more respectable than a show that's been on for 65 years about everyday life in north of the country?
I know. With what we were saying about
getting... Greeters as iconic as... What's it...
Feathers McGraw.
Feathers McGraw.
What we were saying about getting fans involved as well, I think that... The merchandise that's come out this year seems to have been ticking along quite nicely, and it's not necessarily been a 2024 thing. I mean, the merchandise has been on the up since the tour shop opened, but we got the socks this year. You got your Christmas jumper. It still feels like most times that we go along to the tour, there's something new there, isn't it? It's just a shame that a lot of it's not online. And the ITV shop has got some okay stuff, that you can get online, but some of it's not that great. Those I Love Corrie t-shirts are pretty dreadful, aren't they?
Also,
but the tour stuff's great.
I mean, when you're a fan of something and you go to the tour, it's good to have exclusive things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you feel a bit cheated when you go there and you're like, oh, I could have just got this on the internet. But also, I think about the fans outside the UK.
I feel bad for them because we've had lots of, listeners from Canada and the US and wherever saying, oh, where can I get this? And it's you can't.
But, we've never been able to buy the calendar here, which I think is bonkers.
Well, you can import it, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah. But you can't really import, if you live abroad, you can't import a Trim Up North hoodie, can you?
Well, you can.
Particularly easily.
You can go to a shopping service and it is annoying. And, depending on what country you're in, you might end up having to pay a lot of tax.
I'd just be interested to know why the tour merch, or at least more of it, isn't available online. And it can't just be a draw to get people to come to the experience, can it? People go to the experience because they want to walk down the street and see the costumes and whatever. But it's good that the stuff exists anyway. And I do like that the ITV Reloved website has sprung up this year as well, the eBay shop or whatever it's called. Not that there's been a whole lot of Corrie things on there, but we got our John State book and we got our Ammonite from Chariot Square Hotel. And I still stand by that being a really great initiative, because us crazy fans will buy anything. And the idea that we've got something a bit exclusive that nobody else has that was seen on screen.
I'm really surprised they don't have more costumes, but especially for the women, I think it might be a bit, what's the word? Creepy. I think some people would buy them in a creepy way.
But you can you can get people on eBay still selling costume, can't you? Or Mike Baldwin's tie. It shows up every now and then.
I know, but what I'm thinking, Daisy Midgley's, top.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of personal stuff that you can. Just like even the dress sizes is a bit creepy.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's not something that you really want people to be speculating or talking about, I guess. I don't know.
So it's fun, even if the show itself isn't always firing on full. What's it called? Cylinders. Thank you. All cylinders. That's it. It's still better than it's been for a long time if you like collecting merch from Coronation Street. So that's pretty cool, I think. What else has there been? You've had awards. Corrie's not done brilliantly, but it's done okay this year.
Look,
Digital Spy Soap Awards. It cleared up quite a lot of them, to be honest, which is good. Peter Asher's got a good few gongs under his belt this year. Inside Soap Awards, good.
But what is hard? We don't watch the other soaps. So we never know what the competition is actually like. We just want to go, Coronation Street didn't win Best Soap. Okay. But what really, it's difficult.
Yeah.
They like you said, Inside Soap Awards, they got some really good stuff. They got Digital Soap Spy Awards, they had the NTAs. There was no BAFTA nomination.
No, and that's, I think there's been a few years that we haven't had a BAFTA nomination. I think the
BAFTAs can get bent, honestly. I really don't like BAFTA.
I think they're one of those ones that put Casualty as a nominee for it, and I always think that shouldn't really count.
I have a personal vendetta against them for a reason that's so petty. But I
can't remember what it is. You'll have to tell me later. It doesn't feel like you're going to reveal it here.
I was trying to talk to somebody there, and they were just being an absolute dick.
Is this for your job?
Yeah.
Okay. So
they're just
not
really arrogant. Sorry, but they are.
We've not had obviously the British Soap Awards this year, but there was the Radio Time Awards, which Corrie didn't do brilliantly at. But Radio Time.
It's Radio Time.
It's still quite nice to go along to, and it was good that somebody jumped in and filled in the gap, the British Soap Awards.
We're going to have the Soap Awards next year, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
There's been no information about it.
Yeah.
Wonder when that is. I guess it will be in London. What do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Shall we? Look, we're reviewing the year of Coronation Street, and we're still.
What happened? I don't know.
For 45 minutes plus now into this discussion, we've not actually talked about anything that's happened on screen. But like I said, there was a lot of drama going on behind the scenes. But how would you kind of look back on Coronation Street and say, well, this is something, not necessarily a story or a character particularly that stood out, but and for better or for worse, something that you think, well, Corrie 2024 is represented by X
story, or like X
location or production technique or innovation or whatever you like.
If you're going to say what was 2024 about in Coronation Street, most people are going to tell you it was about murder mysteries, misery, and hospitals and police stations. And I'm not going to say that's wrong, really, because I have chosen the police station set as the title graphic for this episode for a reason. Yeah, I mean, Kate Fitton as Lauren and Callum Lille as Joel, they might not have been in most of the episodes last year, that was Dee Dee, but they certainly felt like they were the face of Coronation Street for quite a lot of it. The whodunit, two whodunits with the same group of characters, hilarious. Mixing in some old school characters like Roy for the Roy Cropper is innocent storyline. But yeah, lots of maladies. I got cancer, now I'm fine, and and I got sepsis. Corrie's,
and that's been a thing for Coronation Street for a while now. In the past decade, it's been gradually building up. But
I'm so furious. I was listening to our episode, the last week episode, because it just came on my phone today.
You wouldn't choose to listen to it, would you?
It's too long. They talk too much, and that woman keeps interrupting the man. So rude. But I was listening to it and I was ranting about the medical stuff, and I was like listening to myself going, yeah, it sucks. I hate the medical stuff. Why? Yeah. It shouldn't be about medical stuff.
But the best story of the year for us was still the MND story, wasn't it? Which was a nicely done medical story.
But to me, that wasn't a medical story. That was a story about a relationship and about, love triumphing over everything and how does a family cope. And it was uplifting and lovely. Yeah. Whereas a lot of the medical stuff, but it's a throwaway 1 week story where somebody goes to hospital for something. And I can't even remember what for half the time.
Yeah. I would say, though, that the medical stuff is still a bit more relatable and down to earth than the police stuff.
Yeah, but because,
touch wood, most people won't have that many interactions with the police, in their life.
But that's why I prefer it, because it's fantastical, It's outside of my personal experience, so it feels like less intrusive to dwell on it. I'm not gonna sit around thinking to myself, I'm worried about, I hope I don't get arrested for knife crime.
No, but I don't know whether I can say I prefer the hospital stuff or the police stuff. Really, I've never really been a big fan of the gangstery bits on Coronation Street and the real grit that comes with that and the
I mean,
but then
it feels a bit stupid for us to have even a discussion about do we prefer the medical drama or the police drama, because it shouldn't be in Coronation Street. And no. I know I do kind of find it tiresome, and it's unfair of me. I'm not going to say I'm right to think this way. When people say it's not Coronation Street, this is not what Coronation Street is about. Coronation Street shouldn't be about this. And I think, well, Coronation Street has to change continuously to remain relevant. But I don't think that it should be about medical drama and police stuff to the extent that you really could have taken some strands of the show and made them into their own separate drama, police drama or medical drama this year. I don't know. And you see stuff talking about Coronation Street struggling with budgets and things, and I think that they're relying on younger actors to fill the gaps and maybe paying older cast members less money, which seems really sucky because it's not really fair. And it's not fair on the people that aren't being used, but it's also not fair on the younger ones who I think, I'm not saying they're being exploited or taken advantage of, but it never really sits right with me to hire somebody just because you can pay them less.
That's more of the discourse stinky this year, isn't it? And it makes sense, I guess. And is that the conspiracy theorist in us that's saying, well, the reason that we're seeing more of Lauren and Max and some of these newer cast and Betsy and even maybe Vicky Myers or who had been not a regular is because their wages are less. I just don't know. That's definitely something that stands out to me. If I think back in 2024, I'll think of it was the year when some of the biggest stories were played out by characters that we didn't really know very well, and then therefore why should we care about them as much?
I want to say, in case it's not obvious, which I really genuinely think it should be, and I think we've made ourselves clear, but I want to make it clearer that I don't have an issue at all with using younger people who are new characters at all. And I am certainly no shade at all on their talent and their graft, because they work really hard and their passion. Oh my gosh,
they really do.
And like watching the behind the scenes stuff with Kate Fitton and Callum Lill talking about how they worked on the Joel storyline and the secret about the fact that Lauren killed Joel. All that stuff. They were so passionate and really hardworking, genuinely seemed really nice. But the problem for me is that Coronation Street is a soap that is about people you know. It's about, like, pretend that you are living on a street and these people are your neighbours. It's like a peek behind the curtains of other people's streets. And I don't know who these people are. It could be, I don't know them as well as I know, Sally or Tim even.
But then equally you get an episode like yesterday's, which was front and centre. You got these kids, and it's like flipping heck. It was a good job that they did that. That was outstanding, and it's getting praise from all angles. And then if Corrie had said, well, we're only going to use them a little bit, we're not going to put them in the big stories because they're new, then we wouldn't have had necessarily an episode like that. So it really is, I know, big swings and roundabouts, really. But I know this isn't a predictions or hopes episode. I hope that they lean more towards the longer standing characters next year. But then you can say, well, if you look at the top 10 appearances of the year, they actually were mostly long-standers. Right. Nick, Toya, Leanne, Carla, Sarah Louise, David, Daniel, they were all in the top 10 appearances last year. And the only kind of newbies, really, is you got Kit, and then that ties back into there's more police stuff going on. And Dee Dee, obviously, at 214, who's still a relative newcomer.
Yeah, I know. But she's worked... I mean, it's funny because she is the newest... She's one of the newest regular cast members, but in the story with Joel and Lauren and everyone, she's like the old guard. Yeah, she represents the old guard there.
Yeah,
and you've got Asha. She's a paramedic. You've got Dee Dee is a lawyer. You've got Evelyn's going to train to be a lawyer. You've got Adam's a lawyer. You've got Craig is a police officer. You've got Lisa's a police officer. You've got Kit's a police officer. You've got Betsy's the daughter of a police officer. You've
lots of people involved in the legal profession, and therefore I don't know how they're going to get out of the rut of having all these legal stories. But then if they've just built a police station set. Of course they're going to want to use it. I quite like the police station set, actually.
Yeah, me too.
But
I just don't need it.
I don't need it. It doesn't need to be there all the time.
No, I know what you mean. It's I don't really.
Let's talk about other things this year. Returns is what I would say that I would. I seem to say it every year, but then it seems like every year we get more and more returns of characters. Although I wouldn't say that any of them this year necessarily have lived up to the triple whammy of Wendy, Stephen and Spider a couple of years ago. Not that they lasted too long, but it did feel that we got an awful lot of people coming back into it this year, which has been quite nice. There's been, going away from the returns a little bit, there's been quite a few minor characters that have just come in for a little hello, do a couple of scenes or a couple of episodes and then they've gone again. But yeah, this year we had Reese making an appearance again, Lauren's dad. We had Harvey, we had Damon, we had Linda Moneybags. We had what's Daisy's mum called? She was
Mrs.
in it.
Midgley.
She was in it again for a bit. We had Stefan. We had Clayton. Is that all we're going to see of Clayton? He was in 2 scenes?
Oh maybe? Yeah, that poor kid.
Griff came back.
They're not going to bring him back.
Even Estelle, the little Big Shots, Ruthie Henshaw character was in it a bit this year.
You know what?
And I do like that about soaps. Although there are returns of characters who've not been in it long ago, so they're not going to have the same impact as somebody who we've not seen for 30 years or so. We did get that with Richard Hillman coming back. That was the ultimate return this year, but 2 episodes only. But this year we also had Elena's long-awaited return, didn't we?
And Dorin.
I wish that we predicted in our beginning of year predictions of 2024.
We always used to.
We must have had at least 2 years on the trot where we said, I think this year Elena's going to come back and she's going to have Tyrone's baby. What's kind of your overall...
I thought you were going to ask me what's going on with that, because I was going to say, no, I don't know.
The last we saw of that story, Tyrone had tried to put that, prohibitive steps disorder? No. Order? No. I'm going back on the medical side again. Prohibited steps order on Elena to stop her from leaving the country with Dorin, but then she manages to find out about it and escapes anyway and tells him over Zoom, I'm never speaking to you again. And that's kind of it. But when I look back on that story, I think I quite like that.
I do like it.
It was nice to see her again. And Dorin was just like the cutest thing ever, wasn't he?
There's too many unsatisfactorily ended storylines on Corrie.
Yeah.
That's the end of that. Just move on with your lives now.
Yeah, I when Elena went back off to Romania, I thought it was just going to be temporary and we'd see her again by the end of the year. And I still feel like that can't just be it. It feels like it wasn't worth it,
What?
The Elena storyline, just popping in for a month or two.
I don't know.
Just to say, yeah, you're right. She did have Tyrone's baby.
What do you do? Not every story. You can't have every episode is like a story, and there's only ever like 5 stories in a year, because they're all so important that they're just continuing, and you can't just have we can't have little stories, because this is
there just wasn't much of a story to it, was there? It's like saying, yes, he is a dad. Anyway, bye. And the thing is, I love number 9. I think that family's great. I love the family unit there. Ty, Fizz, the girls, Evelyn, Cassie, when she's not busy drugging Ken. And I was really hoping that we'd get a meaty Dobbs story in the second half of the year, and we just didn't. But I'm holding out hope for that for 2025 at least.
It's weird because the 6 episodes a week, I remember when it came out, we were saying, there's going to be more time for them to talk about more stories, but
the pleasantly mundane.
They haven't. They've just stretched the stories into 6 episodes.
I'm going to say that the weirdest and possibly biggest letdown of a return this year, and what is it? Violet.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, Violet.
Violet, Dylan's mum, played by Jenny Platt.
We're like, she's going to come back and be killed.
That felt like quite big news when it was revealed that she was going to come back. It's like, we haven't seen her on the street for 15 years.
Yeah, I thought she'd come back with a secret, or she'd changed in some way.
There was nothing.
What did she
just
really
came back for Dylan's trial, didn't she? And she kind of was a bit upset with him for a bit. She didn't have a scene with barely any of the old regulars, like Ken or what have you. And then she went off again. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that we got someone who we hadn't seen for donkey's years. That's great because, as you say, if you bring in Harvey and say, look, Harvey's back, it's like, oh, okay, well, it's only not been too long since we've seen him. I wish they'd made more of her. And Violet's not the most exciting character in the world for me, to be honest. But it was good to have a little link to that old Corrie, and that's maybe why I like Jessie coming back a little bit as well, because it was a part of Corrie from the early 2000s saying it's still going there. Or maybe Jessie was a bit later than that.
But, what you're saying, Violet came back for Dylan's trial. And normally it would be, what's that, Violet? You can't come back for Dylan's trial? Oh, you're busy? That makes sense. And so when they actually do it, and they literally come back for the trial, like you would do, and then they go again, and you're like, wow, that was unsatisfactory.
I know. But it's like, with Les's funeral, you're like, could they got Wendy Peters back for a little bit? I don't think Vicky Entwistle wanted to have shown her face on Corrie again. But yeah, and maybe if it had only been a few episodes, we'd have gone, is that it? But that was a bit of a letdown.
It's like when people say something like, they never show anyone going to the loo. Do you really want them to announce that they're going to the loo? It's like 24, when 24 was on with Kiefer Sutherland. I was like, when does he go to the toilet? Like, I don't really need...
the breaks.
Yeah.
I suppose the biggest return of the year, it's not technically a 2024 return, was Bethany. Because she popped in right as the end of 2023, didn't she? How has her return been for you? Because I was was I looking forward to it a bit? I like Lucy Fallon. I think that the character of Bethany is quite, is the minxy, spunky sort of troublemaker. She's not really a troublemaker, is she? She's just got a lot of life and energy to her that I quite like. But although I've enjoyed some of the bitch fests that she's had with Daisy this year, it hasn't felt like Bethany's return had a massive amount made out of it.
One thing, I know we're not doing predictions and stuff, but
one thing I
want from this year is more funny banter and great quips between Tracy and Cassie and Daisy and Bethany.
I have enjoyed what I've seen, the little I've seen of that, yeah. I just think maybe the love triangle bit. I like it sometimes. Sometimes it feels like it's a little bit tired. I think Bethany's I think she's come back as a little bit up herself, hasn't she? Like, I'm a top reporter now. And
no.
It's not been that fun. Although I actually quite enjoyed the Stoma story, and I don't think generally that's what people are saying about it. I think people feel it was a bit of a flub and a bit of a missed opportunity, and not really showing much about what it's like to have a colostomy bag. But
it feels like a lot of missed opportunities, and
I quite enjoyed it just because it was a bit different.
But Coronation Street as a soap is in a unique position to show real intimate parts of people's lives. Why is there not a scene, and I don't know how they could do this particularly, of her getting ready in the morning? When you have a stoma, how do you get ready in the morning? What does that involve? You don't have to have all the gory details, but, follow her getting up in the morning and getting ready. and seeing how it affects her life and what she has to deal with. Why not? Why not have,
they
5
still
minutes?
could, we had a Mason focused episode this week. Did we have a Bethany focused episode? They've had bits like, she went to the pub and the bag spilled. You had the bit where she was going around the flat and Daniel was like walking in on her. She's like, oh my god.
But a lot of that was basically, the kind of Parmesan cheese on the top of the carbonara of the love triangle.
I just quite like the fact that I know, and I didn't buy that they were in Turkey at all during this. Although I did like the fact that they use an airport.
It was a lovely hospital.
I quite enjoyed that there were scenes that were set abroad, and we were supposed to suspend disbelief and think that it happened there. And Sarah Tina O'Brien can always be relied on to bring out the goods, doesn't she? She's excellent. I don't feel so bad about that story as quite a lot of others do, but. Maybe
that, we got a lot of those gritty details with Paul, I suppose,
Yeah, exactly.
We're puring his food. He can't speak anymore. He's got, these needs that he didn't have previously. So maybe they thought it was too much medical stuff in 1 year. But to me, I think the medical stuff really triggers me because the idea of being fine 1 minute and then going and being told, oh, you're going to die. Or, he's got this horrible thing that's going to kill you and you never knew about it until this week. It's just so horrendously depressing to me. And so that is why, I think that's what I'm trying to explain is why I don't mind the Paul and the Bethany storyline, because they're dealing with something that's, is survivable and they're having to work around it, and it's interesting to me to see how people deal with adversity.
Paul's wasn't survivable, obviously.
Oh, sorry, but you know what I mean?
Bethany's was.
Sorry, but it just kind of showed how you dealt with things, and I think a lot of time on Corrie, we don't get how you deal with things. We just get trauma and tragedy.
No, you're right. I suppose we can't talk Bethany and Daisy without also discussing I'm gonna say pretty much train wreck that was the reopening of the Rovers and how all that played out, because we went into 2024 with excitement, high hopes, fingers crossed about the Rovers after its grand reopening, being back to its former glories, packed to the rafters, bringing in the money from I don't know where, the brilliant Rovers team front and centre, Jenny lording it over everybody all year long. And instead, what did we get? We got the same old empty Rovers scenes. We've had a little bit more in the past week or two, like, the coins football thing on the table the other day, but then you got a little bit of Jenny versus Daisy. They've got different ideas about how they want to run the pub because they both kind of technically own it now. And then you have Carla come along and finds out the truth, and she's like, it's my pub now. And I just can't get behind the idea that going into 2025, Carla is in charge of the Rovers.
Do you know what's so funny?
What?
Right, you know how one of the big things that's going on with Lisa and Carla at the moment is like, Lisa's like, I didn't know you only had one kidney. There's so much about you I don't know. And she's gonna be like, well, yes, I own the Rovers. Like, what the hell? What do you mean you own the Rovers? Oh yeah, it's a blackmail plot. Don't worry about it. What do you mean it was a blackmail plot? No, it's a serial killer blackmail plot. Don't worry about it. What do you mean it was a serial killer blackmail plot? Yeah, don't worry about it.
Remember Stephen?
I don't even...
You went after him for a bit. Wow,
half the time, Lisa, honestly, I forget I own it myself, to be frank with you.
It's just... They've really got themselves into a corner with that, haven't they?
I don't understand it. It's such a weird thing to do. What's the forward planning? Look, Coronation Street, they plan everything. They sit and they have their meetings and they talk about the future of the show and they have all the stories and they work out what's going to happen. But you sometimes wouldn't believe it from what happens on screen.
Well, one of the things
this was like the biggest ball drop of ever.
One of the lines that gets trotted out online sometimes that really gets my goat is, the Corrie writers have forgotten about X. That's very, 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 very rarely the case. People say, what's happened to the such and such story? Oh, they've forgotten that Jenny exists. What's happened to this? They've forgotten that Carla owns it. They haven't.
There are so many people involved, there's no way that they've forgotten. They're just choosing not to.
They just choose not to show it. But it does feel, you're right, like that Rovers story. They had the idea of, we're going to close the Rovers. That's going to make headlines. And then they opened it again after a couple of months. And it just seems to have gone back to the way it was before. So it just doesn't make sense how it's still financially viable when it wasn't... a year and a half ago. And Carla being at the top there just doesn't make sense. And to top it all off, you got Jenny barely being there on screen, which has been one of the biggest travesties of 2024. I mean, I think
her and Daisy together behind that bar is so much fun
there's
to watch.
so much
And Glenda as
potential.
well.
The Rovers team are absolutely fantastic. We just never see them. And if you look back to the 80s, and I hate to be one of these people, back in the olden days people, but you had these wonderful scenes of Bet and Betty and Fred, having their breakfast and chewing their fat over what's going to be happening today, and the stories that were based around the dramas in the Rovers. And there's just none of that these days. The only times that we see the Rovers, but behind the scenes at the Rovers, feels like it's this thing gone wrong with Daisy's love life, and that's about as far as you go. It's such a shame, and I do hope that Kate Brooks has got some kind of plan to try and make it a bit more of a vibrant location. I don't know. Does it need something as drastic as getting rid of the bistro or the cafe? I just really, really don't know. I will say though, I don't want to just rag on the Rose completely. I did still love the speed dating night. That was great. That was super. There were some really funny scenes there. Glenda in charge was brilliant. Not that I want Glenda to replace Jenny as landlady anytime soon, but she was really at home behind the bar there. But yeah, Rovers, massive flub. And can I just get the biggest flub, in my personal opinion, away out of the year in terms of stories? It was sadly anytime Glenda was given anything dramatic to do. The PTSD that followed the speed dating episode was nothing. The Rovers got raided one night, and then she got a bit sad about it, had flashbacks, because that's the cool thing to have these days if you're on Coronation Street. Dates Michael for a bit. Literally, a week, 2 weeks? I don't know. Didn't see any of it, didn't get any feeling of any chemistry between them. And then she gets into this legal battle with George, who, we've always got the impression that they've got a really good relationship going on there. They bicker like siblings do. But that whole story of Glenda versus George over the summer, where she finds that she was actually entitled to some of the Undertaker's business, but he didn't give it to her. That was really unpleasant to watch. I thought having these, they're supposed to be light-hearted characters. I don't want gritty falling outs and legal things between them. It just left me with a really bad taste in my mouth.
The trouble is that Corrie stars the comedy ones, and I think this is true generally of actors in general. I think comedians are really good at doing drama, but I don't think that dramatic actors are always good at doing comedy. So when you have a cast and you've got people that are very, very good at drama, and you can't make them comedians, why would you make the comedians into dramatic actors? Because you've lost the funny part of your show. But
sometimes it'll work because you get the likes of Roy Barraclough or Bill Waddington or Bill Tarmy back in the days that could manage both, and they were comedy characters in a way, but they could absolutely do the dramatic stuff. It's just maybe their dramatic stuff wasn't as dark and and miserable and bleak as some of what Glenda was put through earlier this year. But, should we whiz back to something positive? Good story of the year.
Biggest story of the year, Joel and Lauren. Okay.
No,
yes, I like. Look.
Okay, I enjoyed it. You've got a better opinion of that. I enjoyed a lot of it.
I had my criticisms of it because I'm one of these irritating people that I've been moaning about all episode. But look. I know that some people don't like it because it was very gritty, it was very depressing, it was also very policey and courty and whatever. But it was a really interesting way of telling a story. It wasn't a killer storyline because he never killed anybody, Joel. But the mystery of where is Lauren and who killed Joel. I wouldn't say that I was 100% on everything, but it certainly gave us so much to talk about, so much speculation. It was fun to talk about theories. And
the moment when it's revealed that he was responsible for Lauren's disappearance really was a great scene for 2024, wasn't it? And even all the reveal of the who killed Joel with the various flashbacks. I still think that that some of the flashbacks didn't really work. They're over a little bit too quickly. Like Carla walks out of the building and she sees something, but we don't know what it is. Flashback end of the episode, or sorry, cliffhanger end of the episode. But on the whole, I thought it was not bad. It's just a shame for me. It's coming a bit too hot on the heels of the Stevens storyline, which I preferred more. And that is a few years after the Phelan storyline, which I preferred infinitesimally more.
The thing is, right, because Coronation Street is not a show about serial killers or crime or medical stuff, when you actually do those stuff as frequently as you do, you just invite comparisons. So when you're talking about, Toya's got cancer, then you're going to be like, compare it to when
Alma had cancer.
Or...
she didn't have cancer.
Blondie. Daniel. Blondie.
Bethany. Sinead. There we go. We got there in the end.
Blondie.
That's all you can say.
Yeah, I got stuck.
I was thinking of Jackie Dobbs
and
there.
I was waving my arms around,
blondie.
and it doesn't mean anything.
Debbie Harry.
But when you have like the Joel Who Killed Joel, then you're like, this reminds me of Pat Phelan. This reminds me of. Even Stephen. This reminds me of it. Are you saying you want more? You want just a serial killer stalking the street at all times, so that it's just the norm, and there's no comparisons there. It's not fair otherwise.
I didn't mind bits of it. I kind of liked how Roy was thrust to the front and centre of the show, despite his his seniority in the cast. It just didn't completely click with me, and I still don't. I can't click with the character of Lauren. She's one of these that I will. There's lots of characters that I'll give chance after chance after chance to, but I'm wearing thin on Lauren, and she's barely been in the show that long, really. But it's just a misery, and I think that was the biggest letdown of the story. The What's Happened to Lauren story, and also the Joel story, which was obviously so closely linked to Lauren, is I just struggle so much to find anything to cling on to make me give a damn about her. And Kate Fitton is a great actress. She can cry with the best of them. And when she's not in character of Lauren, which we have seen her be, in the interviews and real life, she seems like so much fun.
Characters like Lauren are important because not everyone needs to be likeable, and it'd be boring if everyone was just fun and cool. But I don't know that making her the centre of attention has done the show or the character any favours.
I think the problem is that Corrie clearly... they surely must want us to love Lauren. They don't want us to...
No, really, I think they've got a bit more self-awareness than that. I don't know. I don't know. Because
it's worked so well in the past with the likes of Kelly and Becky and others, maybe they thought, well, we got a formula here that we can trot out, and I just can't quite put my finger on why it's not worked. And it's not because the character has come from a far-right group. I barely think about that when I think about Lauren these days. Maybe I should. Maybe Corrie's done a very good job at making us forget that she had that background. But it's just, there's so little sunshine in her life. She's in the deepest, darkest cave of Corrie misery there. I want to talk about one that we both enjoyed. Let's talk about the Paul story, eh?
Oh, what did you say? Like, you're trying to cheer me up. Let's talk about Paul, eh? Let's talk about the guy that died.
That was, hands down, the best thing about Corrie this year. Same as last year, to be honest. We don't need to speak about it too much because we did about the awards, but I couldn't go through this year without saying that without the Paul story, Corrie would have been, in my mind, a lot lower down and in a much worse place.
But you see, this is what I mean when I'm talking about using characters that you've already got instead of getting new ones. There must be a reason, and I'm assuming it's money, why they've chosen some people who are newer to focus on in big stories. Because what my point is that Paul Foreman as a character, I couldn't give two figs about him a couple of years ago. He was fine. I kind of thought he was all right.
Yeah,
it's kind of reminds me
nice,
a bit of Luke.
Little bit bland.
Luke Britton. He got killed off by Pat Phelan, and when he died I was like, oh, that's really sad actually. But I didn't care about him before then, and that's what I think one of the strengths of Coronation Street is, because everyone who's on the show has been picked because they were the best. When they did their auditions, they were the best at that character, and they're talented and they are hardworking and dedicated to their craft, right? So you can pick anybody and make a story with that character, and you can also make them likeable, because we saw them do that with Mason, and we saw them make a relationship out of nothing with Nina and Seb, so that they could kill Seb off and make us really upset about it in the space of 2 weeks.
And they've done the same with Betsy and Mason, to be honest.
So Peter Ash, just what a gift of a role for him to showcase his talents. It's so sad that he's not on the show anymore.
Yeah.
But I think what they did with the MND stuff and the imaginative way that they told the story, and the fact that it was about 2 gay men, really was quite remarkable.
Superb death scene.
Yeah.
The episode in July, whenever it was, the Paul's perspective, such a clever way of telling it. Narration from inside Paul's head to get the idea that, your mind's still just as active as it ever was. M&D is just eats away at your muscles and your body. The tension about whether Billy was going to go through with assisted suicide. That episode, the in your head dreams in the Orange Club. It was such a brilliant episode, and you had brilliant performances, not just from Peter Ash and Dan Brocklebank, but Gareth Pearce was brilliant as Todd in that. I wish that Todd had been maybe used a little bit more in the story. It felt like he could have been in it a bit more, and throughout the story you got Bernie. We've said before that story not only was the making of Paul for us, but of her as well. And it also brought Billy back, because I used to love Billy, kind of went off him a bit, and now I'm back on the Billy train again. For now,
not everyone shares that sentiment.
No, not everyone does, but that's kind of my. Yes, there were some diversions and kinks in the road in that storyline that they maybe didn't need to go down, but on the whole, I think that everyone involved in it should hold their head up high and kind of give themselves a big pat on the back, because that was absolutely brilliant, hands down, and we're very much deserving of the accolades that it's picked up, and I assume will continue to do so going into 2025. What about the Institute story? Because this is something that didn't really get a mention in the Conversation Street Awards, so we've not had chance really to give our final thoughts about how that went. And, we've made no secret of the fact we've kind of enjoyed it this year for its silliness.
It's cheesy and silly. It didn't feel like an awareness storyline, which is good.
No, it was. I mean, in a way, was it there to raise awareness of cults? Kind of. But Coronation Street weren't shoving that down our throats quite as obviously as they do with some stories, were they?
I mean, a lot of the time it's obvious from watching it that you shouldn't be in a cult, and a lot of these things are like, I did know that already. Like, I know I don't want to have cancer or sepsis or get stabbed in an alleyway or join a cult. You don't need to tell me.
The cults aren't necessarily something you think about quite so much, or sit there late at night worrying about.
It was good because the awareness raising was kind of more about the manipulation methods. It didn't feel like I was being preached at, though. It just kind of felt to me like I can see how people start out with good intentions, genuinely wanting to improve their lives, and get suckered into something a bit more sinister. I enjoyed Rowan. I think the whole thing was really campy, and it also was.
Rowan was pretty campy as the bad guy, wasn't he? But I absolutely adored his character, and it was a shame that his final exit was a bit of a blink and you miss it court scene. I think that he was very charming. He worked great as the recruiter for the Institute. I enjoyed kind of thinking about, is he to blame? Does he know what's going on? Is there Willow pulling the strings with him? I don't know what's happened to Willow at the end of all this. It seems that she's possibly got free with it.
I know, Willow, what a cow. Well, actually, no, is she just a genius?
Maybe she is.
Is she even real? I loved how many stupid theories we had. This is the trouble about us.
It's a shame that there wasn't a link to the old Corrie cult story that we were kind of hoping for. They didn't even mention it, did they?
No.
I know Jo Froggett's got her own big dramas going on at the moment, but a return for Zoe Tattersall this year
What do you mean?
What? No, as in she's in other drama shows.
Oh, I thought you were like,
not
she's
real
going
life
through
dramas.
some hard
No,
times.
if you turn on ITVX, you can't see Corrie advertised, but you can see.
Oh yeah, she's in something.
Jo Froggett, can't you? Yeah.
Downton Abbey,
Downton and onwards for her. But yeah, there are cults that are going around recruiting people, so it was slightly issues related. But I think when they went with the whole malware upload that all that kind of techie jargon with it. They knew that there was a bit of tongue in cheek with it, and I was just able to kind of sit back and enjoy it for the silliness, but also the fact that it did revolve around one of my favourite families, the Battersbys, Toya and Leanne. Toya had been, very much off our screens for the few years before that, ever since, what happened with Imran, and putting her front and centre for me was a nice little personal triumph for Coronation Street, even though, we can't talk about Toya this year without mentioning the whole baby retcon thing.
Ooh.
How are you feeling? It's getting mentioned every now and then, but it feels like it's been kind of put to bed a little bit. The fact that
Almost
she supposedly had a baby after she was attacked by Phil Simmons back in 2001, and we just didn't see her pregnant, and we just didn't see her bury the baby in the park. This caused absolute outrage. I mean, it's a shame that at the time when all of the negativity was coming out in the press, April time, that rumour also came out, because it just added more fuel to the fire, and it erupted, didn't it? People were not happy with that direction, and I think both of us, and correct us if we're wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, were willing to kind of give it a go and say, well, let's see how Corrie does it. I'm
always of the idea, give it, let's see. I'm not going to pretend that I don't criticise stuff before I watch it, because I always do that. There's loads of stuff coming up that we know about. I'm like, God, why are you doing that? That's so dumb. But I kind of think to my, you cheat yourself if you decide before something's going to be terrible. I just think you do. What are you risking by being optimistic? Like being disappointed? Because you're disappointed already and you haven't even seen it.
And at the end of the day, as wide a stretch of the imagination it is to believe that, Toya actually was present then, go on, Bennett, didn't Georgia Taylor do an amazing job at selling it? That scene where she's sitting there in the flat and Nick comes in and she tells them all about it. She describes the birth, the staying in bed at night with a little baby, even though it wasn't breathing, burying her in the park. It was absolutely magnificent performance, and it went a long way to making me go, yeah, I can buy this. I don't want them to go around doing this all the time, but in my mind, I think they've got away with it.
Yeah, I mean,
for me, I know they haven't for most people.
But you shouldn't have to get away with it,
No. How are you feeling about it now? Are you kind of at peace with the fact that Toya had a secret baby in 2001?
I don't know what to think about it. Again, one of my problems is they take such really heart-wrenching, triggering things and they make a story out of them that it feels kind of exploitative, and it stirs up a lot of emotions. And I guess it gets, does it get ratings? It gets on the front of the soap mags and things, but it can really upset people. And I think unless you're going to properly explore it, I don't know why you're doing it at all. Like, if I had lost a baby in a similar way to Toya, what would I think? What would I be thinking? I don't know. Because the trouble about it was, I do agree that you can find comfort in representation. That's definitely something I believe in. But it was lost amongst the discourse about retcons. So if you're a woman who had experienced baby loss and you're watching it or you're looking online, you're thinking maybe this will get people to talk about their experiences. Maybe I can connect with someone else and share my grief. And then you go online, it's like, she couldn't have had a baby. Like, how is that helpful to anybody? And then 2 weeks later, kind of forgot about it. It gets brought up a couple of times. And I feel the same way about the cancer stuff. I didn't watch any of it. You guys probably know that I didn't watch any of the Toya cancer stuff because I can't deal with it.
I did some expert editing. That's my memory of the summer of 2024. Taking the episodes, downloading them, cutting out all the cancer scenes, and then serving them to you to watch.
You were basically like Corrie chemo for me.
Yeah, I was, wasn't I?
So I don't know.
And while still trying to keep in the Institute stuff that you were really
you did a brilliant job. You did a brilliant job. And you talked about it by yourself. I don't know if it was obvious.
I think it was some episodes.
But what was the point of that?
Yeah.
It actually genuinely upset me, and it added a lot of anxiety to my everyday life that they had this, and I'm being really vulnerable and open sharing this with you. I didn't really want to talk about it, but it really upset me, and it still kind of upsets me to think about it now. What was the point of it? Why are you doing this to people? This is a comfort show for a lot of people. If you're, and I never will say don't talk about it at all. I don't think there's anything that they shouldn't talk about on Coronation Street, but give it proper, respectful treatment that actually does what you're billing it to do. You know, Coronation Street likes to say we're raising awareness, we're providing representation. Then make sure that you actually do it and you don't just use it for a cheap 2-week story or however long it was, because I can't remember now. But you know, and that this is no dig on any of the actors because they all did a fantastic job. But if you're only in, you know, a story for a month about having cancer and then you don't have it anymore, what else can you really do? And don't even get me started about how the fact that, you know, they whipped stuff out of poor Toya's abdomen and the next day she was going for a drive.
Yeah, trotting around the flat, wasn't she?
I don't think appendixes and ovaries are the same, but I certainly know that you can't just get something hooked out of you and then wander around the next day in a car.
Yeah, I don't think they needed to do that. And I really hated how much it upset you for that storyline to go on, especially as it was, you know, one of your favourite characters. And Corrie would justify it by saying, well, you know, it helped build the bond between Nick and Toya because we wanted him to be. We wanted to see that Leanne was distancing herself under Dorin's instruction.
Okay. So Coronation Street kind of reminds me a little bit of like, imagine if you have a child and you're like, right, I need to teach my child about loss. I need to teach them about death. I have to let them understand that this is a concept that exists, right? So what could you do? You could make them watch The Lion King. And then Mufasa dies in The Lion King, spoiler alert. Right? Or you could get their dog and shoot it in the head. And then go, look, now your dog is dead, now you understand what death is. And Coronation Street goes for the second option every time. We don't need to shoot the dog in the head to learn about death.
And we did have that with Cerberus last year.
You could do something a bit more subtle.
Not being shot.
But if every time the most dramatic thing possible happens, every time, you become numb to it, and it starts to become just nonsense.
And sometimes it really does smack of, and maybe I don't blame them for doing it, because all the soaps doing it. Who's going to get on the front cover this week? Who's going to pick up the awards? Who's going to get people talking about it? Which is, you know, that's the press department's job, I suppose. They're in the game of trying to be the most talked about.
They have to. They can't... You know, and also they've got shareholders, they've got stakeholders, they've got advertisers. If the advertiser's saying, you know, you've got to help me sell lamps and Connie dolls, can you please give Toya cancer? What are they going to say? No, because it's too dramatic. Nobody's ever going to go, let's not do that story, it's too dramatic, are they? For goodness sake.
It feels like it's just becoming more and more, and I don't think it is picking up the pace, because we've said for years that it feels like there's too many issue-based storylines, but I feel like I've had my awareness raised about as high as it can go. You know, Lyme disease, bullying and knife crime.
Don't get surgery in Turkey.
Child sexual abuse with Lauren. Blood cancer with Frankie. Gail having a heart attack and flatlining over the ending credits, which was the weirdest thing ever. PTSD with Glenda.
Revenge porn, have you said that?
Revenge porn? No,
that was so weird.
I'd wanted an Abby story for so long, and that just didn't hit, because partly I was feeling like you're trying to teach me about something.
But the trouble with these, like they're not even B stories. These they're like C, D, E stories. How can you have revenge porn story and ovarian cancer storyline that don't even really get mentioned ever again? That should have been an A story in a year. You know, even
especially with Sally
stupid,
Carmen front and centre in the spotlight.
Even something as stupid as like what I was saying before about Lisa and Betsy's house being flooded. That was just a line in one episode to get them to the flat. Really, your house being flooded is really traumatic and quite inconvenient. Why would you not make that a story? Why instead of having Carla have sepsis and have to, you know, have kidney issues, why couldn't it have been a story about her supporting Lisa because her house has been flooded?
Yeah, and even going back to the revenge...
I know it sounds lame and rubbish, and you're not going to have... What are you going to have on the front of, like, Inside Soap magazine? Plumbing issues. I don't think so, but...
Well, you know, even with the revenge porn storyline, they didn't know how... They did. They knew what they were doing. They totally knew what they were doing. But is it about that, or is it the drama of somebody set Steph and Brent's offices on fire, and who was it? And it was, the reveal that Jack was the one that accidentally set his office on fire was kind of fun. I think a lot of people predicted that's where it was going to go. But then it's like, oh my gosh, Jack's done this, and then it just gets waved away. Rehabilitation order. Stefan's going to get a bit of compo. His wife will pay it off, and that's over. And I hate it when they build up to this huge climax of how are they going to get out of that, and then the answer is they just do.
They just do. Get over it. How else would you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I hope that, with Abby seemingly quite involved in this knife crime story that's just started this week, we'll get to see something a bit different from her, because I absolutely adore that character. That storyline, sadly, just didn't play to her strengths.
It just feel a bit like they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and I don't know whether that's...
A story that I'm kind of down the middle on still is the Ken and Cassie one.
It's interesting, isn't it?
That's really interesting. Who'd have put those two at the beginning of the year, just as a, not a romantic partnership, because it maybe still isn't going down that route. I don't think so. I hope not. But just as a couple of actors that have got really great chemistry and just so fun to see on screen, and watching them listening to classical music together and chatting about whatever. It's been really, really great stuff. And Cassie, she's been back and forth. Has she been a villain? She seemed to be a bit of a scally. Well, I can't remember what some of the insults that Tracy has thrown away have been.
Yeah.
Lord of the Wags, I don't know.
Lord of the Wags.
Maybe, I don't know what it was. But yeah, that's been really nice seeing them. And having Ken, Corrie's longest serving character, get a story that's developed over the course of 6 months, and seeing him actually as more than just a token. Here he comes into the Rovers. He's going to say something a bit funny. Now let's put him in his box again for another 3 months, which is sadly where, some of the other characters have got to at the moment. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed seeing those two together. It's just a shame that it's been sort of muddled up a little bit with the poisoning, which I still can't make peace with, about how on earth is Cassie ever going to come back from this? Does Corrie want us to like her? It's strange, isn't it? What are you kind of thinking?
About the Cassie and Ken story.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, the going down the Munchausen's or factitious disorder. I mean, they just had it. They didn't even have it that long ago, did they? Because what's his face? He was Emma's boyfriend. Was buggering around with that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Factitious disorder.
Yeah.
It's like they have a go at a story and they're like, oh, that wasn't good. We need to do it again.
I just want to go back to the funny thing about that story is when it was announced that it was happening, I think it was not an official announcement, but I think people forget that it wasn't an official announcement. I may well be wrong here, I have to know. But people often say, that are criticising Corrie, they put that story and they said that it would be highlighting the plight of older people, and after Ken fell down the stairs and what it's like to be an elderly person that needs a carer. And we didn't get to see any of that at all. But yeah, it wasn't Corrie that said that. I think it was behind the, a source to the Sun that made out that it was going to be an elderly care story. I think Corrie's always said it was going to be what it turned out to be. I think it feels like it needs to come to a conclusion soon. But I would say, to me, that's been more of a positive than a negative in the year.
I think it's interesting when you have a story like Ken and Cassie where you've got a villain who is a likeable villain, whose motivations are unclear and who seems to be doing it for a really confusing reason.
Well, Kit's been a bit like this year, hasn't he?
I like those kind of characters.
You like the character of Kit more than me. But I'm kind of interested to see where he goes in 2025. I still don't really buy why they needed to have him come in as a part of Paul and Gemma's family.
They're good for generating discussion, I think. But I know why people get wound up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so what else have we had this year? Anything this year that's been pretty good? I think that the Tracy and Tommy affair had its moments, didn't it? Having at the beginning of the year this character who, that's another comeback we didn't really even mention, Tommy Orpington, who was an absolute nothing of a side character, to be promoted to semi-regular for about 2 months to whisk Tracy off to Spain. That was kind of fun, and I didn't give two hoots about Tommy before, but I thought that Matt Milburn did a pretty good job of turning him into a an actual character for a bit. It's a real shame that Steve and Tracy have split up in the same year as Nick and Leanne as well, because those two are couples that we often fought for. We think that they deserve to be together. They're destined towards each other, and while other people said no, Steve and Tracy, what a load of rubbish. Nick and Leanne, no, that's that. We always kind of fought for them, and then sadly they split up this year.
I was more Steve and Tracy than you, though.
Were you?
Yeah, because I always said that I think that
teenage sweethearts in a way, maybe met more one side.
They always feel like, even though I saw most of Steve's wives, I always think Tracy feels like the more obvious partner for him. I don't. Maybe it's because he's the only one he had a child with.
Yeah, maybe. I think that
obviously Ollie, but
something that
that's not a wife.
We didn't even mention AI Ollie when we talked about the Institute story, talking about campy weirdness. No, one of the things that makes the Tracy and Tommy story stand out as more of a net positive for me this year is they did take it down some really funny routes, like when Gav was up the ladder and sees Tommy and Tracy in bed. Sally gets the wrong end of the stick when Steve's trying to talk about this marathon session that he had today. She thinks he's talking about his romp with Tracy, but actually it was a taxi drive. There being misunderstandings about what Tommy wants Sally to do in his bedroom. That was great fun. The Sally at the bust unveiling, and then all the stuff with the bust unveiling where Steve and Cassie stole it away, hid it in Tim's bed.
Silly.
Really, really funny stuff. I thought that was a real comedy high point for this year. So it's why one of the reasons I'm glad that Sally got the comedy character of the year. Nothing
in this year is like clip show comedy moment.
It's difficult to know sometimes. I mean, you can't compare everything to the AA scene, can you? I think that Sally's had a few good moments, but yeah, maybe there isn't anything that's had us completely
out as the most hilarious. Because I mean, even when we did even when we were doing the shortlist nominees for the funniest character of the year, we were going through kind of trying to remember who had scenes that were funny, and a lot of them were just the vibes of funny. Like Evelyn, funny.
Debbie.
What comedy bits did Debbie do? I don't know, but when I see her, she makes me smile and she makes me happy, and she's kind of funny. But why is she? What could I point to? If she won the award, what could I say? Oh, this was a hilarious Debbie scene. She moved a chair during
the fight with Nick and Rowan. Yeah.
I mean, I think the actors are really,
she's just
really
very
good.
Camp, and people have been talking a bit about Debbie recently and saying how classic Corrie she is.
She's brilliant. I love her. But like I said, you can't say, there were these classic comedy scenes. If we were to go through and we had an award for the best comedy scene, what would you put in?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
I'm sure
I think
funny
the dinner
bits.
party with Sally and Debbie was...
Most of them were Sally, like Sally's reaction to Lisa and Carla kissing.
Yeah, Sally's been great this
Sally's at the bust unveiling. Sally at the dinner party.
They need
She's
to make
great.
more use of her if they can.
They need to have more comedy.
Yeah, they really do.
And that is one thing that Kate Brooks did not talk about, actually, when we...
No, she didn't. When Iain Macleod came in as producer, he was like, I'll bring back the classic Corrie comedy. And Kate's not said that, but it doesn't necessarily mean
she's
there's
not going to
happen. She did say friendships, which was very heartening.
I mean, it might come naturally from other things, but she didn't.
She
didn't mention it one way or the other. She's not like she said, I don't like funny things.
Do you want to talk Swala?
Yeah.
As obviously a huge story for the end of the year, and if you want to talk about getting people invested in Coronation Street. I mean, earlier this year we had the bullying storyline, and that was great with how it did resonate for a little while with the kids on TikTok. But yeah, Swala is an absolute other level.
Yeah,
and certainly, again, not on my bingo card for 2024.
I mean, we've spoken so much about it in the episodes, and when we did the awards also, because they won a Best New Couple award, and Carla was the Best Female Character of the Year. And so, the fan reaction has been immense. There's been, lots of accounts created just to follow Swala and talk about it. I think it's been brilliant for the character of Carla. She's definitely centre stage. And I think, her relationship with Peter was always very convincing to me, but it never really made... She has been with Peter for so long, there was no romance, if you know what I mean. There was, like, the beginning of a relationship...
They were very comfortable, weren't they?
In Coronation Street, the beginning of a relationship is always when you get the most focus on that relationship. And so seeing her with a new partner is interesting because I haven't seen that for so long. I think just never mind the fact that it's Lisa Swain who has just been promoted to regular character this year and was a fan favourite and everyone loved her, and and she's not changed either, because one of the things we really liked about Lisa, why she became a fan favourite, was because she's just not having any of it.
Yeah, she was a no-nonsense lady, and she still is.
To remember her just like being a bitch to Toya about Imran, like when...
Yeah, what was it when she was Toya and Spider were being held hostage, wasn't it?
And she's like, "I kept this one alive" or something. Yeah, like, my god, just Ice Queen, love it.
And she's still the same. We've obviously seen a lot more of her vulnerable side, and I like the gradual reveal about her past and Becky and
that's going to be a big story. Yeah,
I want to see that. I need to see. We need somebody posted a tweet out today, didn't they, about that? We need to see Swalla's cat, more cats on Coronation Street. But yeah, I've really enjoyed them as a couple.
Felix Swain.
It's felt very it's felt romantic. It's not been. It's had its racy moments, but it's not been defined by let's jump into bed. Seeing Carla kind of gradually accept that this is okay, and what her feelings are. Yeah.
And I think I just watching it makes me realise how little I pay attention normally to relationship storylines, because I find them really dull. But I definitely
romantic relationships.
What did I say?
Well, just relationships. You're talking about romantic ones. Yeah.
Like, I don't care most of the time. I really couldn't care less. But this one, I'm actually paying attention to it and seeing how it's developing and watching them. And I don't know whether it's because this one is more interesting or because they're putting more effort in. And I really do think they're putting a lot of effort into making this storyline, which is very, very good, because, Coronation Street's not been great with, lesbian couples.
No,
there haven't been very many of them.
Yeah. Or if there has, it's been like Tracy and Paula for a quick bunk up.
Yeah, I mean
this hasn't been like that, and when I heard about them getting together, I was worried it would be a little bit like that, but it's not.
A bit too male gazy, which is not what we want. We want it to be a proper. It does feel like, and Verity has been the producer, and now Kate Brooks is gay woman. It feels as though the story is being handled in a way that feels respectful to women, which a lot of lesbian relationships, historically speaking, are just, not that way at all. Not written by women, written for men by men a lot of the time. And I'm not just talking about pornography. But, I think it's been really lovely.
Yeah,
but what do you think?
Don't screw it up, Corrie.
Do you think that I'm just... have relationships been more like this before? I don't know. I feel like I've never seen a relationship develop on Coronation Street before in my life. But that's obviously not true, because there's been loads of romances.
Often it is just a case of, if I think back to, Peter and Tina, for example. One day they're standing next to each other in the Rovers. They talk and it's like, right.
She walks past him once.
And now they're in bed together. And it has felt sometimes it's been a bit like that. Or it's felt just forced for storyline purposes, like the Glenda and Michael one. There have been some lovely romances blossoming over the years. Like Jenny and Johnny. That was a couple that we really, really loved. And that was, a gradual build-up with her working at the factory.
I think maybe I just haven't paid attention.
Even Toya and Imran has been lovely and sweet, or it was at the time.
Until she killed him.
Until that happened, which look out for that in 2025. But this has been a really interesting, and I think the huge furore online was the big fan push for this has helped me to find it more interesting as well, because I know that there are so many Corrie fans who are heavily invested. It kind of makes it a bit more fun to go along with it, and it's not a story that you look online and there's people saying this is rubbish, this is awful. People are getting excited about it, and
that's nice.
And it's nice to go along with the excitement with something for a change.
That is true. Their enthusiasm is definitely infectious.
Yeah, for sure. Running down a couple of other little stories this year. We've had the David and Shona story. I'm hoping that this isn't the end of it, now that they've decided they are going to get back together. I hate it when a character just cheats on their partner just for shock value, and it did smack a little bit of that. But I've got trust that they're going to use the plats for more than that, and I've been gagging for more Shona on my screen for years, so it's been brilliant that we've had her make a bit more of an appearance and show what a cracking actress
she's
Julia
got great
Goulding
hair.
is. She does have amazing
Best hair on the show? I don't know. She's
Jenny Bradley's got something to say about that.
Yeah.
Thank you
I'll
very
tell you
much.
what, this is a show with good hair game, and we do not get enough credit. Coronation Street does not get enough credit for the hair game.
Yeah,
because
but
Daisy's got amazing
should
hair.
it be more like
Lisa's
an
got
average
amazing
normal
hair.
street where
Carla's got
not
amazing
everybody
hair.
doesn't look like, where some people do look like they've been dragged
I
through
do
and head
think
backwards.
that you might be... I think women in general are much better at maintaining their hair than I am. That's what I would say.
What else have we had? We had some exits like Stu, Beth. Neither of them have made particularly...
Eliza.
Yeah, none of them have made a particularly huge impression on me.
And-
Some of these smaller ones. What?
Now Mason, spoiler alert, this has already happened, is dead.
2025, Gemma. We're not talking about that.
How there's no justice for Eliza.
No, there isn't.
No one's found
After
out that
bumped-
he ran her
Nobody
over.
will ever know that Mason clipped Eliza with his
That's
car.
bonkers,
God,
actually.
And then Les Battersby, of course, off screen. A bit of an exit there.
But he had a good send off for somebody who hasn't been in the show.
Yeah, I think that Joel and Paul's exits were certainly the biggest ones here. And for some characters, Beth wasn't the most popular of characters, was she? She actually was at a time absolutely brilliant, but she just turned into a bit of too much of a nasty gossip, didn't she? Not a fun gossip. She was just a bit nasty. So I wasn't too bothered with the fact that it was a little bit of a lackluster off you go to her. And the same with Stu. He just wasn't really a character that we'd particularly click with. So say that's off you go to Germany. It was funny that Yasmin pretty much closed the door on him before he was 10 metres down the road.
That was hilarious.
That's on the same level as Leo being called out. It was a bit boring though after he was killed off, wasn't it? So yeah, that's kind of it for Coronation Street in 2024. There was so much more we could talk about. You got Todd's very brief romance with Moses. You got Hope's vaping. There's all these little bits that maybe didn't turn into anything, but I guess that we started off with, this was a big a year off the screen as it was on screen, and there's lots of people out there that are saying Corrie's awful at the moment, and if you think it is, you are perfectly within your rights. I've not said it's been the best of years. It's certainly not been a vintage year, but I'm kind of ending with this being a 3. What am I going to score this out of? I had something earlier on the episode that's completely gone out of my head. What image sums up this year?
I've forgotten.
3.
I was going to be really good and remember. I thought it was obvious.
3 trips to the police station in a half-an-hour episode.
Oh man,
That's a bit of a naff one, isn't it? 3 AI versions of dead characters.
Everyone's shouting. Oh, McLeod sandwiches.
3 McLeod
I knew it was a sandwich. I said sandwich just then.
You did.
I thought I was just being obsessed because we hadn't had dinner yet.
What would you kind of rate this year out of 5?
3.5.
Okay.
Because there's some really great stuff, great stuff.
I'm glad that there was Paul. I'm glad that there was the Institute. I think I'd be feeling a lot worse about the year if we didn't have that.
I was really caught up with the Joel and Lauren stuff. I was obsessed with it. I really was. And there's been some great writing too. Some of the episodes this year have been fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned the episode where
Who's
Lauren.
your character of the year?
Gosh, I don't know. I will abstain from that one.
All right.
The episode where Lauren comes back, and that was where it was just the two-hander. That was a really good one, wasn't it? That had some fantastic writing in, and the Paul story was just littered with it.
I just remember that storyline now, for me, is linked forever with us being in the Midland Hotel and Donald Trump being shot in the ear.
Is that what was going on?
Yes.
I don't remember.
So now when I think about Lauren and Joel, I think about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I still, obviously, I always hope for a positive year ahead, but I think maybe this year more than most. I'd really like there to be a big turnaround for Corrie, but we will, as I say, we'll talk more about that when we do our looking ahead episode. We've got a bit of listener feedback, haven't we, about what our lovely listeners thought about 2024, so we'll have a rundown some of those, see if they cover some topics that we've not mentioned yet. We had loads. I haven't got everybody's here, so apologies. We have read them all, but sorry if we don't mention yours here. Martin says, not that Martin, we haven't even mentioned him. I mostly enjoyed it, but there are too many characters. Just get rid of the ones that don't have personalities or don't contribute anything to the show. Chesney, Summer, Yasmin, Michael, etc. It won't look great in the press, but it'll help in the long run. Good to see Stu, Beth and Simon go this year. I'd be happy if the focus was only on characters who actually live in the street, i.e. not the precinct, but keep Sean and Dylan. That's good. It's nice to... I put a tweet out yesterday saying how great Anthony Cotton's been in the stabbing storyline, so it's nice to see a fellow Sean fan here. I really don't mind these new characters like Betsy and Mason. As long as they're interesting, it's okay. They really need to be careful that it doesn't become a police show, though. Yeah. Finally, to mention something that has been spotlighted recently, the grim/shocking storylines are fine, I guess. They're what gets the attention in the magazines, but they need to be balanced out with classic humour stories and characters. I feel like we're far from achieving that at the moment.
Richard says, highlights for me were the Lauren and Joel storylines and its twists and turns, Paul's MND storyline, Kit joining the show. I know his character isn't everyone's taste, but I'm enjoying the enigma of his personality, which is a good, excellent word. I've never thought to use that word, Richard, but I feel as though that will be the word I use from now on.
I've just slightly had a read ahead of Richard's email and remember there's another character that we've not even mentioned this year. Sorry, carry on.
He says, and the start of Mason's redemption.
Poor Mason, he's got a mention in both of these in the positive, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he says, as a huge fan of Jack Carroll the comedian, I was hoping for a lot more from his character, Bobby. I just think... Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Let's move on, shall we?
Let's
just not talk about Bobby. Lisa has emailed in and said, overall, it wasn't a banner year. There were some great moments, though. The Joel reveal moment was brilliant, for instance. I was sad that Paul's story got sidelined with so many subplots. His dad. Oh, yeah, I forgot about Denny. Kit, Summer's weird boyfriend. Felix.
Never forget.
Never forget Felix. There were some odd side plots, but Felix coming back with his giant water bottle, I'm all for. I'm glad they didn't cut that. It should have been about his struggles with MND and dying, but it ended up being less about him and more about other people, most of whom really serve no purpose. I know they want me to care about Lauren's story, which has gone on forever, but I don't. I hope she goes off to prison or moves to Ireland or whatever will get her and Franca off the screen. I think that... I don't mind that there was focus on some of the people in the Paul story. In some ways, like I say, I wish there had been maybe a bit more about Todd, but Kit's the one really, and he wasn't a huge part of it, that I just don't think was really needed.
Emily says, positives. I think some of the younger characters, particularly Dylan, Liam and Mason with the bullying storyline, though Sam, Hope and Joseph are always a delight, have really stood out this year. Also, although people tend to generally be a bit disparaging about medical storylines, I think she's talking about
Jammer.
Me. Paul's MND storyline was incredibly well acted and really gave Peter Ash a chance to shine. I think the cast and crew at Corrie obviously care a lot about this subject, and I really hope they continue to have this amount of care and sensitivity with any other medical storylines that they might do in the future. Negative. The whole retcon with Toya's baby was unnecessary, although kudos to Georgia Taylor for her performance, she was excellent. And although I have generally enjoyed the Lowell
and Joran storyline.
Joel and Lauren's storyline, I do think it got a bit convoluted and messy, particularly towards the end. I appreciate what they were going for, and there were some great moments in it, but I think it could have been done with being perhaps a bit shorter, and maybe even without Lauren going missing for quite so long.
She was missing for a very long time, wasn't she? And by the time she showed up, nobody really thought that she was... Well, before we realised about Joel, clonked her on the head, I don't think many people thought she was dead. And then... after that, I don't think many people thought she was dead either. It's a shame, but I think we're just so cynical and we're used to
tricks,
to tricks now,
a misdirection,
and it's much harder to surprise us.
When there isn't a trick or a misdirection, we get mad.
I know, can't win again.
Emily says, lastly, a few more positives. Oh, a compliment sandwich. Thank you, Emily. Lastly, a few more positives.
You're making me hungry with all this talk of sandwiches this episode.
We're not even having
we haven't had our tea
dinner
yet.
Nice to have David the dog getting a bit more screen time this year.
Oh, yeah.
I've also liked the Sally, Tim, Mason combo we've had this last few weeks. And I'm a big fan of Swala. And I find the fandom around it quite funny but wholesome. Love the fact you can currently buy a Swala-themed 2025 calendar
I didn't know you could buy a Swala calendar, but I am not surprised.
A Swalander.
A Swalander. Yes.
It's such a good shipping name.
I know, it's great.
Nice to see Carla have a bit of happiness, and Lisa is a great full-time addition to the cast, in my opinion.
Nice,
thank you.
Amy, Amy's... I wish we'd see more of Amy this year. What happened to her radio show? Was it just so that Paul could go on there?
I think Paul got it cancelled.
Maybe he did. Starting with Peter's lacklustre departure at the start of the year and spending most of the year trying to convince me to care about a character who had only just arrived, Lauren. I really felt it was a poor Corrie year, where sometimes watching it felt like a bit of a chore. However, for me, there has been a real sharp uptick in the last month of the year, and I absolutely love it again. The stories and characters are interweaving instead of feeling like 5 different shows that happen to take place on the same street. The thing I've probably most enjoyed this year is Sally's humour. It's always a treat to see her because you know there's going to be something good coming out of her mouth. I agree that the last month or so of Corrie has on the whole felt pretty good, and is this the Brooks influence? I don't know, but I also agree that we're seeing more stories intermingling, aren't we? Especially along all the Platt saga that we've been getting recently. It's made making the notes for the podcast a bit more difficult, but I think as a viewer I prefer to see it.
Yeah, definitely. It's more cohesive, isn't it?
Yeah. Who else? Pat. Do you want to read Pat's email? It's your turn, so you're going to read it anyway.
I have to. Pat said she found Paul's MND storyline to be the unexpected highlight. I dreaded it when it was diagnosed, but they did it perfectly. It was moving and very sad in places, but it had sweet and funny moments, was quite inspiring, and brought characters together and into conflict just as I'd want. I appreciated the bullying storyline, and I loved the twist that the Joel, Lauren, Dee Dee story took. Most disappointing was the Rowan and Leanne story. It started off so deliciously, but ended with a weird little whimper.
Oh, no, yeah, I agree with
That's
that.
True. I needed more fallout from it. I'm a fan of the Nick and Toya relationship and the return of vindictive rather than pitiful and self-centered Leanne as their antagonist. Overall, a very tasty year.
Yeah, we've kind of moved. We haven't really talked about the Toya and Nick relationship and the current fallout that Leanne's going through with them. And I think people know what we think about that. I'm absolutely loving it, and I don't care that I don't know whose side that I'm on. Yeah, the more of that in 2025 would be brilliant. Joanne, we got loads. I've got loads of these. Joanne says, I would say a lot better than 2023. The positives. Paul's M&D was wonderful, albeit emotional and terribly sad. Amazing performances all round, including the special Paul episode. Enjoyed the Institute storyline, mostly. I think Rowan was a fun villain. I like the surprises this year, including the two-hander between Joel and Lauren. Christmas was lovely, and ultimately loved the episode that Gail went. Pleased we had more Platts. Swain has worked brilliantly too, and great to introduce her as a main character. Negatives. I didn't particularly enjoy the missing Lauren story or who killed Joel. Too much Lauren in general. Look, Toya's baby story / cancer / affair with sisters, partners of decades has been hard to watch. Not been keen on as much as Georgia is fab. Too much focus on newer characters and not enough of long-term characters. And I don't think Bethany's return has worked well.
No. Final bit.
Final for now. And again, sorry for everyone who wrote in and we've not read it out, but we got a lot, which is brilliant.
Laura said, love Kit. I think this feud with David is going to be epic. David to win, though, obviously.
Yeah.
Love the Joel reveal. Can't wait for Daisy and Daniel to get back together. Really disappointed with Gail's leaving story. I've missed Mary also. As a big fan of Gary, I've been a bit disappointed. Maybe I'm weird as I'm waiting for him to kill someone and get away with murder again.
Too late, Mason.
Oh, quite a mixed year if I'm honest. Not overly bothered about Betsy and Lisa, so maybe that's clouded my judgment a bit as I feel like they're dominant at the moment. Not giving up yet though. Can't wait to see what's in store in 2025.
Well, it's nice that a lot of these emails were, well, they all were, weren't they? Pretty mixed. They recognised that although it wasn't perfect, there was definitely some bits that got their juices flowing. And that's kind of what you want.
You can't Corrie juices in your sandwich.
You can't have everybody loves all stories in a soap all the time. I think
Well, this is the most fascinating thing, isn't it? You know, two people can sit down and watch the same television show and come away with completely different thoughts about the characters and yeah, I just find it fascinating. That's why I like doing the podcast, so we can sort of chat about it and have different opinions and have arguments where I interrupt you all the time.
Speaking of the podcast, there's a segue for you. We usually do end these reviews of the year by just reflecting on how the past 12 months have been for Conversation Street. And
You said the name of the show.
I said it, didn't I? Yeah, been great. Another.
It's been a really good year. I think this is one of the best years. And every time we have a good year, I think, it's not going to be as good next year.
It started off this year. Every year at the beginning of the year, I think, what's going to be the big thing that's going to get us so excited this year about doing the podcast? And I think, the highlight for me was going on the press day.
Yeah.
It was just brilliant.
Yeah,
I loved
speaking
it.
to Kate Brooks.
Speaking to Kate Brooks,
Because-
doing the quiz, hosted by Sally Ann Matthews, on a team with Shanique, Sterling
Queen.
Brown and Coulson.
Oh, that was just lovely. Thank you to Alison at the press office for letting us go along to that. And we also got the great apartment over the river where we could look over at Coronation Street and do some videos. It was just...
Well, that video, which blew up bigger than any of our other videos on YouTube ever has by quite a wide margin, has been lovely to see. So thank you to everybody who's liked and watched and shared and talked about that. But yeah, it always feels like, is it a bit of a showing off? But I don't mean it to be. It's just been lovely being able to get up to Manchester, seeing some of these people behind the scenes at Coronation Street, some of the crew, some of the cast, some of the people that nobody's ever heard of that work on Coronation Street, and a lot of it is down to the generosity of our patrons who bankroll it for us. But we went to the Radio Times Soap Awards. That was lovely. I waiting for everyone to come and getting the photos is always a thrill for me. I loved on that trip bumping into Paddy Beaver at the hotel bar and sitting and having just a chat with him for 15 minutes, and he was the nicest person.
He is really
Paddy Beaver
really
is the
nice.
loveliest guy.
There are so many nice people on Coronation Street.
Yeah, and we went up. I've loved that Dr. Gaddis, Christine Mackie, knows who we are this year. I know.
Dr. Gaddis.
That's quite something.
Could theoretically get me a prescription, and I love that for me.
Yeah, that's been fab. Just from the 10 years of Dr. Gaddis episode that we did, and she happened to listen to it, and she's been absolutely brilliant since then.
I'm always bowled over by how lucky we are.
Yeah.
And it is because of you guys listening that we've had all these opportunities, and
some great interviews this year. Vicky Myers, that's probably our second biggest video on YouTube by quite a bit as well. We've had Lucy Jo Hudson from Classic Coronation Street, Katie, Emrys Cooper. Obviously, Peter Ash has been huge. You mentioned Kate Brooks, the new producer, came on the show. Matt Milburn at the beginning of the year was lovely.
Actually, I'm going to say, I think we went on Kate Brooks' show.
We did.
Because we filmed it on the set of Coronation Street.
Yeah. Well, what else have we had happen? I think Corrie Eliminator, that's been your baby this year, hasn't it? That was your little brainchild.
I know, but it was supposed to make less work for you, but it hasn't.
It hasn't, but it has been. It's helped me to be slightly less creative this year, and I do like to be creative with the podcast. But it's also nice when I go, oh, it's about time for a Corrie Eliminator episode. Well,
everybody seems to like it.
Loads of people have been really positive about the Corrie Eliminator stuff.
Some good votes.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see who wins. I really have no idea who's going to win.
No,
it's so fascinating.
We've got three of the heats to get through still, haven't we? And then the grand finale. So
I'm scared of that.
I guess that's a big thing for the podcast in 2024.
Do you think we should maybe just only release it for patrons to try and trick people into signing up?
No.
Can you imagine?
Speaking of Patreon, we had our merch for this year, didn't we? Our pencils and our key ring. Just a little thing, but it's kind of nice. And I've still got my Conversation Street key ring proudly dangling on the keys.
It's still all right, isn't it?
It's still all right.
Held up really well.
It's held up. I don't feel that this year there's been a whole lot of pushing the podcast, to outside of people who kind of already know about it.
We don't care about that.
We don't usually, but some years we've had a few more, like we've been invited on the radio for things, and we haven't so much this year.
I kind of prefer to be kind of low key about it.
Just in case people who are trying to hide the podcast from
no, not to do with that. It's just you open yourself for vitriol, and people are so nasty, and they get really personal. Like when we talk about Coronation Street, we try to we never target people individually. Apart from Iain Macleod, when we say this is because his name is on it, That's why we spoke about him. He gets paid to be, the head. He
gets the awards, but he's going to have his criticism.
And I'm sure, there will be things to say about Kate Brooks in time. Although at the moment I love her, but yeah. So when you get a broader audience, you get people just rocking up to just be nasty, and I like all the people that listen now.
We did get a shout out in, was it the Manchester Evening News? I can't remember, just the other week.
Yeah, they called us Corrie experts.
Yeah, because we were able to identify who it was that Dev was kissing at New Year. Yeah, we asked one of our Insider contacts. Who was that
Who
that Dev
is
was
that?
standing next to at the bar? And
It
it
was
turned out
Prinny.
that it was Prinny, who is an extra at Coronation Street and also works at the canteen. But it was nice for us to get a name check on that. And I did go on the radio one point this year as well to give a soundbite about Helen Worth leaving Coronation Street. So there was that.
What radio station?
I can't remember. I think it was maybe BBC Manchester or something like that. I don't remember.
Like that.
But yeah, it's been a good year for the podcast. Again, I'm just like, oh, what's it going to be this year? We always start the year by saying, oh, we probably won't go up north quite as much.
We do say that every
we
time.
usually end up doing it anyway. I'm sure there'll be something big. I want to get back to the British Soap Awards in 2025, and who knows what else the future will bring. But thank you everybody for all your support this year, and stretching back the past 12 and a half years ever since we started. Some of you have been listening all that time. You've still not got sick of us. If you have got sick of us, you're not listening to this. So thank you very, very much for all your support in 2024, and long may it continue.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can keep going just as strongly in the new year.
Thank you, everyone. Your support means the world to us, and thank you for listening.
Any other final words? That's 2024 done. Let's go on to 2025.